Mike, are you gonna... Okay, there it goes. I was afraid the mic wasn't picking me up for a sec. Okay. So, quick recap of the last two trial bits. The chief of police was this guy who loves to pause for a really long, uncomfortable amount of time. Came into the courtroom, and we kind of just said, okay, I guess I'll cross-examine you. I don't know what you're doing here. And it turns out that he came in so we could cross-examine him, so we could tie a piece of evidence from a case that he's working on to the case we're on. But it turns out that the two cases are connected because they both have the same victim. Bruce Goodman died at the same time in two different locations, and we need to figure out how. Also, I swear to God, if Meekins comes in here and starts blaring his megaphone, I'm just... I don't know. I may just shoot the man dead myself. So, what do you think, Mr. Wright? I think the prosecution is as confused as we are. After all, the victim was murdered in two places at the same time, and a different suspect was arrested at the other crime scene. Lana! Good morning, Mr. Wright. I apologize for yesterday. I was indisposed. I hope they didn't hold you for questioning too long. We just finished, actually. I'm used to all-nighters, though. So how'd it go? It's as Mr. Wright suspects. The police are clueless. I figured as much, so I struck a plea bargain. A plea bargain? What do you mean by that? We agreed that if I told them the truth behind this simultaneous murder, they wouldn't see capital punishment. That's what I mean, Emma. Lana! Don't tell me you... Much to my regret, I'm as much in the dark about this as they are. The sky. We discovered traces left by a certain person in the police department's evidence room. They belonged to Officer Jake Marshall. You found Officer Marshall's traces? Bloodstained fingerprints, to be exact. That's the trump card I have up my sleeve today. You do understand what this means, don't you? In order to defend my sister, you're going to accuse Mr. Marshall? We have to play the cards we're dealt. Isn't that right, Miss Skye? Do what you have to do, Mr. Wright. It is now in session for the trial of Lana Skye. The defense is ready, Your Honor. The prosecution is... I'm afraid you'll have to clarify. It takes 30 minutes by car to reach criminal affairs from the prosecutor's office. The victim, Bruce Goodman, was slain at both places at the same time. But that's not physically possible, is it? What's more, I hear the victim from the evidence room just disappeared. Yes, and the body eventually reappeared in the trunk of Mr. Edgeworth's car. Wow, this is one messed up trial. One of my duties as prosecutor is to present impartial evidence. Today, I will present evidence relating to the murder at the police department. In so doing, I believe the way in which we should proceed will reveal itself. Now that's what sets Mr. Edgeworth apart. He sounds so on top of things, even though he doesn't know what's going on himself. That's supposed to be an admirable trait? Very well, let the trial resume. On the day of the crime, what exactly transpired at the police department? Mr. Edgeworth, you may call your first witness of the day to the stand. For its first witness, the prosecution calls the suspect of the murder that occurred at the police station. The suspect? You mean the so-called murderer? Oh, please, no. Oh boy. These are getting wild from the get-go. Will the witness please state his name and occupation?
Yes, sir. I am Officer Mike Meekins, sir. My occupation is, that would be murderer, sir.
So you're telling us you're a professional killer?
Sir, it was me, sir. I'm the one who did it. I'll never kill anyone again, sir.
Oh, fuck you, Meekins. Just gonna drop that down to start with, because holy shit, I cannot deal with this guy. Actually,
Sir, I'm what you would call a part of the younger generation, sir. Person whose actions adults can't possibly comprehend.
There we go. Please, Mr. Edgeworth, sir. Help me, sir. Officer Meekins.
Yes, sir.
Give us your report of the crime. Consider that an order.
Yes, sir. As you wish. After all, I am a part of a generation that must be told what to do, sir.
Can't fault him for a lack of enthusiasm.
Although it's not my normal duty, I was assigned to guard the evidence room that day. I spotted a suspicious man on the security screen and rushed into the room. I was only doing what I was trained to do, sir. Suddenly attacked. I fought for my life. Then I did it. After that, I passed out, until another officer smacked me awake.
So the victim, Detective Goodman, attacked you?
Do unto others before they do unto you. That's the Meekins family motto, sir.
It's really, really shitty. I see. Then you fainted and a colleague helped you regain consciousness.
Yes, sir. He knocked me upside the head, sir.
Very well. The defense may begin its cross-examination. What I need here is more info to work with. Alright. Mr. Meekins, you work in the General Affairs Department, do you not?
Yes, sir. I am in charge of hiring new recruits, sir.
Yikes. Now there's a scary thought. Evidence transfer was taking place on the day of the crime, which meant many officers were given special tasks not ordinarily performed.
I was in charge of guarding the Blue Badger, sir.
The Blue Badger? Oh my god, that thing.
Yes, sir. The lovely police mascot created by the head detective, sir. I was to ensure it wasn't broken during the transfer process. That was my sole mission for the day, sir.
I see. Sounds like a very, important mission.
After the award ceremony finished that day, there were so many people running around that I relocated the Blue Badger to the evidence room.
Oh, so that's why you went to the evidence room. Tell us, what did you see when you got there? In order to enter the evidence room, you need an ID card, am I correct?
Precisely, sir. I have one right here around my neck.
So then, your ID number should be listed in here, right?
There it is! I found it! This is the one right here.
Could you please read us the number?
Yes, sir. It's 4989596. That's my number, sir.
I see. But the number is shown as being used twice. Please explain, witness.
It's no real mystery, sir. The first time is when I relocated the Blue Badger to the evidence room. And the second time is when I went to go get him after everything's settled.
I see. So it was during that second time when...
Yes, sir. That was when I spotted the man on the security screen.
Okay, so there's only one number we don't have an explanation for. Lucky 8 sevens? So you were attacked. Can you please tell us exactly what happened to you?
It was a knife, sir! A knife!
Detective Goodman pulled a knife on you? What happened then?
Well, with me charging in on him like that, he looked as surprised as I was.
Exactly the kind of person someone would want to run into.
That's when I reacted, sir. I swung my arms like an octopus, struggling to detain him. That's how I got this gash on my hand.
If you just kept your cool, your hand wouldn't be...
But when I saw the blood trickling down my arm, I panicked. I grabbed the man by his collar.
Wait, so he didn't actually attack you? What exactly do you mean when you say you did it?
I know I don't look the type, but I'm really into kung fu films, sir. The man let his guard down for just an instant, so I snatched his knife from him.
You took his knife?
I spun him around and performed a disarming maneuver. I made sure to close my eyes like a man.
See. He must have been desperate.
The next thing I knew, his white coat was drenched in a sea of my blood. And then the next thing I knew...
Yes?
He punched me right in the face, sir.
Good. It sounds like Goodman was in the right here. He was just holding some evidence, and you assaulted him. About what time did you regain consciousness?
No offense, sir, but how am I supposed to know that? I was unconscious.
Oh, right. According to the report from the officer that woke up the witness, it was about 5:30.
He hit me right in the head, too. I woke up crying tears of pain.
That's nice. I mean, it's nice that you recovered, that is.
When I came around, though, I made sure to finish my mission, sir.
Your mission?
Yes, sir. The Blue Badger, sir. I returned to the entrance before things got out of hand.
Well, we can all rest easy now. I believe we now have a fairly accurate picture of what happened. Yes, Your Honor. Only one thing remains unclear. Was the man this officer murdered really the victim? He's got a point. Yes, Officer Meekins?
With regard to that, sir, take a look at this. It was sent to my cell. Chief Gant delivered it to me just this morning, sir.
The chief? Delivered it? What is that? A videotape? A videotape? In 2017? Preposterous.
Yes, sir. That's absolutely right, sir. A videotape, sir. Contains footage from the security camera in the evidence room.
What? But I specifically asked if there was such a tape, and was told it had been mistakenly erased. That's quite a mistake.
I just do what I'm told, sir. It's the only thing I'm really good at.
Looks like communication with the police department is as good as ever. Well then, let's have a look. Show us a video of you murdering the victim.
Oh, please stop using that word murder, sir. It scares me.
Video of a real murder. Just what are we getting ourselves into? I mean, it's just going to show Meekins, like, flailing at a guy. Oh wow, actual animation. Meekins? What the hell, dude? He vanished. Well, I believe we're all thinking the same thing. How can we deal with these unsettling feelings stirred within us? What the hell is that wriggling piece of plywood?
Sir, that is the pride and joy of the entire Criminal Affairs Department, sir. It's the Blue Badger, sir.
Am I not surprised this isn't going smoothly? Yes, well, anyway, This tape seems to prove that the witness did indeed encounter someone in the evidence room, and some sort of activity did take place. Your Honor, instead of relying on clearly incomplete footage, the witness's testimony will suffice. Is that alright with you, Officer Meekins?
Yes, sir. As you wish, sir.
Meekins, do you attack anybody who goes into that room?
His face can't be clearly seen in the video. There's no question that the other person was Detective Goodman, sir. I mean, he opened the locker, which required Detective Goodman's fingerprint to do. The locker he opened is unquestionably Detective Goodman's locker, sir. So it must be him. No one else could have unlocked it.
What's this about a fingerprint? Each detective has been given a locker equipped with a fingerprint-activated lock. These locks ensure that each locker can only be opened by the detective it belongs to. Intriguing. That would mean the victim at the crime scene would have had to have been Detective Goodman. Very well, the defense may begin its cross-examination. I don't know where this cross-examination will lead, but everything begins with contradictions. That's where I have to start. Well, no, everything begins with pressing the witness for more details. Come on, Phoenix, you know the drill. Tell me, were you able to get a good look at him? At the face of the man who attacked you with a knife?
Sir, if you must label people as having seen or not seen the man's face, I believe I would be classified as the latter?
The latter? But you were standing right in front of him, were you not? More to the point, you were the person who fought him, weren't you?
Oh yes, sir, but I didn't get a clear look at his face, sir. I'm not the kind of guy who looks directly at people when talking with them, you see?
Yeah, that's a good trait for a police officer.
Still, I'm sure it was him. I'd bet my badge on it.
But you don't know that for sure, do you? You never actually saw Detective Goodman's face.
Well, I suppose you might say that. That is, if you must label people...
Since his face can't be identified in the video, only you could verify it.
Why is everyone looking at me? If I had to label your stares as disturbing or...
Meekins!
Eek!
Having been shown a questionable video at best, we are not in the best of moods. Now please be more certain when you testify.
Yes, sir.
You claim that the man who brandished a knife at you was Bruce Goodman. Tell us why you are positive it was him.
I mean, he opened the locker.
About these lockers, is there no way to open them?
No, sir. I've myself tried all kinds of methods in the past. They only respond to registered fingerprints, sir.
Meekins, what the hell? I wonder what kind of methods he's tried. If the man opened the locker's lock, which only responds to its registered fingerprints, then he must be the person the locker was assigned to.
Exactly my point, sir. And this too. The locker he opened was unquestionably Detective Goodman's locker, sir.
I don't think I saw the vase in that video. How do you know that information?
I've heard rumors, sir, from people in the know, sir.
People in the know?
The workers in the department cafeteria, sir. They keep me informed. They also listen to my romantic troubles, sir.
For the record, the open locker did indeed belong to Detective Goodman. I verified this information through a more reliable source. So the victim opened the locker with his own fingerprint. However, the most important detail is not shown in this video. The man's face.
Sir, if I may say something, sir.
Please do. After all, you are the one being examined.
I don't understand why the man's face is so important in this case, sir. I mean, it was his hand that opened the fingerprint lock. And it was his hand that tried to thrust his knife into my body, sir. My unsettled state can testify enough to this, sir.
Yes, you have a point. The footage doesn't lie. That is, unless the defense can find a problem with it.
Mr. Wright, let's check the court record again.
Is there a problem with the security video? Given, besides the fact that it's sweeping back and forth, and so we only can see, like, half of it? Okay, 221, that's 514. Let's see. Wait. Okay. Something dropped out of the locker, yeah. But there's no scrap of cloth from the other locker, the one at the front. Yeah, Meekin's fighting. Yeah, there's nothing. Yeah, it's 5:15, so... Wait. Okay, now the cloth is there. Okay, go back. I think the wrong locker is also open. Okay, let's see. No, okay, no, that's the right locker. Okay, but I do see a problem. Regarding the video contained on this tape, there is one thing in particular that seems rather strange. Strange? This contradiction leads to the possibility that the man may not have been Detective Goodman. What? This video contains such a contradiction? Interesting. Your Honor, I have a proposal. Yes, Mr. Edgeworth? I propose we have the defense point out to us this alleged contradiction in the video. He would want me to point it out. Very well. Proposal accepted. Let us further inspect this piece of evidence. I will now play the security tape. Mr. Wright, please show us this contradiction you speak of. I have to point out a problem in the video? It's the first time I ever had to do that. You can do it, Mr. Wright. It's set up so you can fast forward, rewind, or pause the video. Just take a good look and be sure to point out the right thing. Please don't play it too many times. I can't stand watching this video. Did this guy ever become a police officer? Now then, Mr. Wright, please enlighten us. Where's the contradiction that indicates the man may not be Detective Goodman? Okay, so... yeah, he opens the middle locker. Yeah, we can't see his face. Yeah, they start fighting. There's a... I just noticed the handprint on the blue badger. Okay, let's go back. I need to see. Yeah, that handprint is still there. How long was that handprint there? I wish this wasn't black and white. Okay, that's still there, so that might just be paint. Yeah, and I'm also curious why that locker is lit up. Like... ah, shame I don't have a camera. Because all the other lockers are, are dark. Why is that one in particular lit up? Does that mean the locker was already open? Okay, Meekins is down. And there's the... oops, yeah. And there's the thing. So... I'm going with my gut on this. I'm gonna... the thing that's strange about this video has got to be this. Officer Meekins. Sir, do you mean me, sir? As I understand it, the locker apparatus works like this. When you grab the handle, a sensor reads your fingerprint. If the print matches the registered data, the light turns on and the lock is released. Okay, so yeah.
According to my very limited experience, that's the way I understand it, sir.
If so, then something is seriously wrong with this picture. I mean, several things are wrong, but, you know. I'm also not sure what it is that falls out. Is that the rubber glove? In which case, how did it end up on the crime scene tape? When the victim reaches for the handle to open the locker, let's rewind to a little earlier. Here, notice the light? What's this? It's already lit. Precisely my point, Your Honor. The locker was already open before the victim grabbed the handle. Order? Order! What's the meaning of this? It's very simple, Your Honor. The locker wasn't locked on the day of the crime. But the locker locks are controlled by an electronic system. When a door is shut, a sensor is triggered, and the locker is automatically locked. Oh, I know. It must have broken down. Of course, I'm not an expert in this. It's not likely, Your Honor. The sensor would detect and report any malfunction. It's worth... I'm gonna say it probably... Like, unless it's an incredibly high-priced locker, it wouldn't do that. Like, you'd have to physically have someone figure out that there was an issue in the first place. Oh well, it just goes to show novices should keep their mouths shut. So then, Mr. Wright, do you have an explanation? Me, Your Honor? Yes, why was the locker locked? Me, Your Honor? Yes, well, you see, this isn't exactly my field. What do you think, Miss Scientific Investigator? Huh? Oh, maybe something like jam the electronic system? Something jam the sensor? Wait. What was it that something fell out? Was that something wedged in there? Something else that seems out of place in this video. Yeah, I thought so too. There's got to be another clue somewhere in this footage. Very well, let's inspect the video once more. The locker wasn't locked, Mr. Wright. Please point out the cause for this. I'm also curious about something, so... 30... I need to check... There's the fight. Hand back. Yeah, okay. Okay, I'm gonna... Yeah. Please watch closely. This is the continuation of the part I showed you earlier. What's this? Something white fell out of the locker. But sir, it's been my experience that things fall out when doors are opened. I often fall out and roll great distances when I open my car door, sir. Meekins, shut up. We can't be sure that item was in the locker to begin with. What do you mean? The sensor triggers the lock when the door is shut. What if something was inserted, say, between the sensor and the door? Inserted? Yeah, like someone just put something in to you know, like a shiv or something. This white thing wasn't inside the locker. It was stuck between the door and the sensor. Oh, I understand now, sir. It's just like my tie. And 2 out of 3 times it gets stuck in the door when I get out of my patrol vehicle, sir. Instead of the door closing, my tie But the object would have to be extremely thin to fit in the door. Not only that, it would also have to block electrical currents. It would need to be an insulator. Oh, so like the rubber glove. Yes, an insulator, but at the crime scene. There just might have been something that fits the description. But sir, by insulator, you don't mean... I think I finally got this figured out. Very well. Will the defense please present the relevant evidence? What was the insulator that was stuck in the locker door?
Well, it's a glove. A piece of evidence. I found this near the locker. A thin rubber glove.
But we can't be sure that was in the victim's locker.
It has a tag that says Sl9 Incident. The video seems to depict the victim opening the locker. But that isn't the case. The lit lamp attests to this. On the day of the crime, even I could have opened that locker. Is this not so, Officer Meekins?
Sir? It would appear so, sir.
Order, order, order. So are we to believe then that the victim whom this witness stabbed in the evidence room was not Detective Goodman?
Do not be misled, Your Honor.
And what do you mean, Mr. Edgeworth?
The defense has merely demonstrated that possibility and nothing more. The victim in the video was indeed Bruce Goodman. The prosecution will offer one more testimony to prove this.
What?
Officer Meekins, please testify about this.
Sir? Me, sir?
I'm not sure what you're referring to, sir.
Oh, you mean that, sir? Of course, sir.
Is this a joke?
Very well. Begin your testimony.
There's one other thing that proves the man was Detective Goodman, sir. To enter the evidence room, one must use their ID card. When an ID card is used, there's a record of it. And at the time of the crime, the detective had used his card.
An ID card record. I see.
I have the ID card record right here, Your Honor. Now, there's only one number we can't explain. The ID used at 514 is that of the victim.
Just before that crime, Yes, without a doubt, this is the victim's ID. However, one thing does strike me as unusual. Several hundred cases should have been due for transferal. Why were there so few people using this room?
This particular evidence room is only used for storing certain special cases. Special cases? Extremely violent cases involving police staff. Just hearing that makes my hair stand on end. Me too, although it doesn't make much of a difference. Because his hair's spiky. There are only a few cases up for transferal there, and most were cleared up by noon.
Right, I see. Now let us move on to the cross-examination.
Okay, so unlike your earlier testimony, you believe this to be rock solid, do you?
Yes, sir. Solid as stone, sir. If my right hand wasn't wrapped up in bandages, I'd even give the V for victory sign, sir.
Couldn't he just use his right hand for that?
Let's hear him out. The witness can't afford to make any more mistakes.
It's impressive that he's lived as long as he has with the mistakes he's made. He apparently, regularly falls out of his car and almost chokes himself to death. Is that card hanging from your neck one of those ID cards?
Yes, sir. This card right next to my cuff, sir. I keep it here so I won't ever forget it.
But what if someone were to steal it from you, keeping you out in the open like that?
Maybe I shouldn't wear it out around my neck. Remember when I said 2 out of 3 times my tie gets stuck in the car door when I get out? Well, the remaining time my ID card gets stuck. Instead of the door closing, my ID card chokes me.
Maybe I should just leave this one alone. At any rate, each police officer has only one ID card. Both the police department and the prosecutor's office can attest to this.
Please proceed with your testimony.
I'm wondering if Mr. Sevens was Gant. Let it be noted that this is a record the witness referred to.
Let me see. Yes, that would be it, Detective Goodman.
What's the matter?
According to this, Mr. Edgeworth, your name is on here.
So it is, Your Honor. Not that prosecutor again. Hey, maybe he's behind all this. Being a prosecutor, he could hide the evidence.
Mommy, is that man in blue a murderer? Shh, don't stare at him.
You got the wrong color, kid. It would seem the inquiry committee will want to speak with you again today. I have nothing to be ashamed of regarding my actions or their consequences. For now, let us continue with the cross-examination.
Poor Mr. Edgeworth. It must be so difficult for him.
Earlier, I believe you testified that when you asked the man to show his ID card, he pulled a knife on you.
Yes, sir. He didn't show me any ID card, sir.
Don't you think that's odd? I mean, if he had his ID card, all he had to do was show it to you. There wouldn't be any reason to draw a knife. I'm wondering if that was Marshall dressed up as Goodman.
Maybe he just panicked.
Everything stems from contradictions. Let's point them out.
Mr. Wright, what do you think?
I'm confused.
What?
The problem with this ID card testimony is far too obvious. It's not like Edgeworth to miss something like this.
You're thinking too hard about it. Come on, let's show them what we've got.
Okay, so it's got to be something to do with the ID cards. His own ID was used, Meekin's ID was used twice. Goodman's was used once. Edgeworth's was used once, and then there's an unknown ID card. So what was this? ID 5. Ah, shit, sorry about that. Sneezing up a storm. Date lost, 2/21. Goodman was filing a report that he lost his ID card. Or that's what I assume. So, damn. Hold on a sec, I gotta sneeze. Okay, so there's one other thing that proves the man was Detective Goodman, sir. To enter the evidence room, one must use their ID card. But we have his card. So, there's a record of it. At the time of the crime, the detective had used his card. No, that part is true. But I'm thinking what happened was that Goodman lost his card because, you know... Oop. No, one. Yeah, the lost item report. You know, it's almost filled out, but he couldn't remember the number. Like, he wrote 59. Now where's the thing? Yeah, he got the second number wrong immediately. So I'm pretty sure that he lost his card, and that's why he couldn't finish filling out the report. So go back. Wait one moment, Officer Meekins.
I'm not good with waiting, sir.
I have the victim's ID card right here. I found it at the crime scene. That makes sense. That's not what I'm presenting. When I say crime scene, I'm not referring to the evidence room at the police department. I mean the other crime scene. The underground parking lot at the prosecutor's office. Your Honor, I have one more piece of evidence to present. It's a very important clue regarding the victim's ID card. A lost item report? It's only half completed. But it shows that Detective Goodman has lost something on the day of the crime. Something important enough to fill out this report. Let me guess. You believe this something to be his ID card, right? I can't say for sure, but there is a high probability. On the day of the crime, Detective Goodman was not carrying his card. Order? Order. So now, what does all this mean? It can only mean one thing. It doesn't require much thought. The man Officer Meekins encountered in the evidence room was not Detective Goodman, but rather the man who stole his ID card. Order, order, order. Does the prosecution have a response? I have only one thing to say to the defense. Bravo, Mr. Wright. Bravo? Allow me to summarize the defense's argument. At 5:15 p.m. on the day of the crime, the man Officer Meekins encountered in the evidence room was not Detective Goodman. There are two grounds to support this. First, the locker in the evidence room was already unlocked. Second, the victim lost his ID card. Am I correct so far, Mr. Wright? Yes. What's he up to? That being the case, we must inevitably arrive at a single conclusion. If the victim in this video is a fake, then the murder in the evidence room is also fake. In other words, the security camera does not show the instant of the murder. That is... I guess that's right. Is something wrong, Mr. Wright? Only moments ago, you seemed content to be pointing your finger around. Is it good? Well, it seems you finally realized exactly what you've gone to such lengths to prove. Explain yourself, Mr. Edgeworth. The defense has already done the explaining for me. The victim in this video is a fake, which means a murder did not take place at the police department at 5:15 on the day of the crime. So the real crime can only take place in one location, the underground parking lot at the prosecutor's office. The murderer being Miss Lotta Skye, the defendant. The evidence is compelling. A trustworthy witness observed the moment the defendant used the murder weapon. Ah! Well, no, the murder weapon is still wrong. Like, Edgeworth's knife wasn't used as the murder weapon. Knew that testimony was way too shabby. It was all a trap from the beginning. Activity in the evidence room still leaves many questions unanswered. Who exactly was the victim Officer Meekins encountered? And where did this person disappear to? However, this trial's purpose is to examine only the murder of Detective Goodman. It's just so, Your Honor. Mr. Wright, you have to do something, or else Lana... What do I do? How am I supposed to get myself out of this? One moment, Your Honor. What now, Mr. Wright? Don't tell me you're objecting to what you've just proven. Of course not, but I almost walked right into the prosecution's trap. What are you talking about? We're not playing magic. This cross-examination has proven one thing and one thing only. The security video did not show the actual murder. Also, the freaking cloth hanging out of the locker. Jake's locker. However, it cannot be said that it is unrelated to the murder in the parking lot. Specifically, large amounts of blood traces were found in the evidence room. The defense demands further examination into the truth of the matter. Mr. Edgeworth,
Yes, Your Honor?
if this court were to examine this further, other witnesses will be necessary. Is the prosecution prepared?
I'm sorry, Your Honor. The prosecution considered the incident at the police department to be unrelated. We have not prepared any other witnesses for this incident. This just might be my chance. Time to call a certain Texas Ranger to the stand. Mr. Wright, do you mean... Your Honor, the defense would like to request a specific witness.
Oh? Whom do you have in mind?
Someone we have reason to believe knows the truth. The truth behind the activities that took place in the evidence room. The prosecution requests to hear this person's name before deciding whether or not to comply.
Very well then, Mr. Wright. This person whom you would have testify, what is his or her name?
The Texas Ranger? Officer Jake Marshall. Why him? I can't let him know everything just yet. He's in charge of the evidence room. I feel we should hear what he has to say. Prosecution agrees to the defense's request. Since he was responsible for guarding the room, we should hear his testimony. Fortunately, he works in the police department. We shouldn't need longer than 20 minutes to prepare.
Very well. The court will take a 30-minute recess while the witness is subpoenaed. Will the prosecution please prepare the witness during this time?
We will, Your Honor.
Court in recess.
Meekins should be gone, so I think I can give volume back. There's no stopping you, is there, Mr. Wright? Huh? What do you mean? You called for Jake Marshall. It seems you figured everything out. I haven't figured anything out. Lana, you're the one who knows everything. Emma, you always know everything. Why don't you just tell us? Mr. Wright is trying his hardest to protect you. I don't recall ever asking for his protection. How can you be so cold? Don't you trust us? Don't you trust me? I hope I'm not interrupting anything, pals. Oh, I guess I am. I'll come back later. Oh. Oh, Detective Gumshoe, what is it? You got a lot of nerve, pal, making a detective run around all around while on duty. And to top it off, you call me here? I've seen happier people at funerals. Sorry, Detective. You better be, pal. Hey. Hey, hey, hey! 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 I didn't see you there, Miss Sky. That's okay. So, have you brought what I asked? Oh. Ho ho ho! Ho 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 ho! You mean this, right? My apologies, Detective. Due to my present circumstances, I was forced to use Mr. Wright's name when making my request. My name? Never in a million years would I have thought it was you who asked me. Could I bother you to bring me the Sl9 Incident files? I'll need them by noon. Talk about crazy. The Sl9 Incident? But Lana, that's... I thought Mr. Wright might need them, so I had them brought here. Here, you might do well to read them. I can't believe you, the chief prosecutor, were a witness in that case. Miss Sky was a witness? I'll take it from me, you don't want anything to do with serial murders. What do we got? Files for the Dark killing solved 2 years ago. Criminal Joe Dark, crime serial murder, sentenced death. Victims Edward Jones, Jason Knight, Edith Kirby, Rachel Moss, Jen Bates, Neil Marshall. Head prosecutor Miles Edgeworth. Witnesses Lana and Emma Sky. Executive investigators Damon Gant, Lana Sky. Head investigator Bruce Goodman. Investigators Jake Marshall, Angel Starr. Sky, Gant, Starr. I don't really see anything in there. Oh, what? Now that I've brought you your stuff, you're just gonna ignore me? Emma, but why?
Why is your name in here?
What? My name's in there? I don't know. Unless... Oh no, it couldn't be. Lana! It says Sl9 Incident, is that?
That's the classification number the police filed it under. 2 years ago, the rest of the world knew it as the Joe Dark Killings. Or, as they called it, Joe Dark 30. The Joe Dark...
No, Lana! That's over with, no!
Uh-oh. Well, wait, she ran away.
You know what? I just remembered. I gotta be somewhere. Sorry, pal, but I'm out of here.
Jake Marshall, Angel Starr, Damon Gant, Miles Edgeworth. Not to mention Lana and Emma. Everyone involved in this case is connected to those killings 2 years ago. This can't be just a coincidence. Knowing you might just be able to figure it out. Time to get back to the trial, Mr. Wright. Best of luck. I better take a good look at this file. Yeah, I did. I didn't see any names that stuck out in the victims. The court will now reconvene for the trial of Miss Lana Skye. It didn't come back. Allow me to call the next witness to the stand. The officer in charge of guarding the evidence room on the day of the crime. Witness, please state your name and occupation. Me, partner? Oh, I'm just a man, same as you, wandering the trails of civilization. Occasionally helping the elderly cross intersections when needed. Oh, I know, you're a patrolman. As for my name, if you listen hard enough, you can hear the howl of wind calling it out. To be exact, it's Jake Marshall, Your Honor. Oh, wind. I've never heard Edgeworth described that way. Now, Mr. Marshall, let me ask you something. You were in charge of guarding the evidence room on the day the crime took place. Oh, Sprawl, it's obviously, you know, soda. Coca-Cola. This is correct. According to the papers, partner. What do you mean? Desperado's soul is as boundless as the desert sands. No paper can sum it up. Maybe it's best we get on with this quickly. And please share with us your testimony of the day of the crime. In English. He has to speak in English. Heavily accented English. My job was to keep a wary eye on that bone orchard. And they said I was supposed to make rounds 3 times a day, but that ain't my style. Besides, the room's protected by 2 security systems anyway. If I remember right, I was at a street-side saloon at the time it went down. So you were drinking on the job. I'm just an innocent traveling man, so if you're out of ammo, it's time I hit the trail. Okay, I take it back, he was drinking on the job. I can't say I particularly care for your attitude. I can't say I care for your beard, but you don't see me complaining. Wow, dude. Rude as fuck. Wait a minute. What do you mean by 2 security systems? I mean the security cameras and the ID card reader. I reckon even a cowpoke like you knows about those. Yes, well, what about the fingerprint-activated locks inside the evidence room? Fingerprint-activated locks? What kind of newfangled doohickeys are those? It's not being very helpful. He's not that good with machines, or with following orders. Everyone's got their weaknesses now, don't they, Mr. Prosecutor? This one seems like trouble. Okay, Mr. Wright, he's all yours. Okay. I mean, honestly, if you got paid to just watch some random evidence locker all day, that'd be pretty good. How exactly did you keep an eye on the evidence room? I just made sure nothing moved in the security camera monitor. That room's so still, even time doesn't there. I was just a caretaker who interred the recordings. You interred them? The videos of nothing aren't that useful. When the time would come, I'd erase the tape. If If nothing unusual is recorded, tapes are to be erased every 6 hours. Each time I'd erase a tape, it felt like I was erasing a part of my life. This guy has a flair for the dramatic, but it isn't going to do him any good. So, in actuality, you don't physically enter the evidence room. It's just admitting to not doing his job, going out drinking while on the job. But you made your rounds on the day of the crime, right? Ain't you heard a word I said, partner? I told you that ain't my style. I'm afraid I don't understand. No desperado I know lets rules get in his way. No desperado I know joins the police. No desperados I know join the police force. So, Officer Marshall, on the day of the crime, just between you and me, I didn't set foot in the evidence room that day. Yeah, you did. Didn't he? He was the one who woke up Meekins. And there was a rubber glove stuck in the victim's locker. Do you know anything about that? I'm sorry, partner. Can't say I do. I haven't been to that crypt in weeks. How does this guy avoid being fired? Yeah, like, you did go into there. You woke up Meekins. I could swear that it was said that you were the one who woke him up. You used to be a detective, so you've used the evidence room in the past, correct? Of course. Back in the day, my locker was a goldmine of evidence. And yet, you didn't know about the fingerprint locking mechanism. Sorry, partner. I ain't good with machines. I couldn't even tell you how a bike works. It's quite incredible. The sensors on the locker handles cannot be seen. It's well known that some detectives are unaware of their presence. Now that he mentions it, Detective Gumshoe said something like that too. At any rate, it doesn't seem like this is relevant to the crime. Can you tell us what you were doing when the crime took place? No. Well, actually, he woke up Meekins at 5:30, didn't he? What were you doing in a place like that? I was eating spaghetti. Not even Angel's steak lunches can beat that parlay's Vignola Sepia pasta. Do you mean to tell us you abandoned your pre-release duties to eat some noodles? Not all desperados eat tacos, partner. That's not what I mean. I hope this has at least taught you a lesson. Strange. This isn't usually where Edgeworth says, "Did you not want to raise this year?" I'm just an innocent traveling man, so if you're out of ammo, it's time I hit the road. Out of ammo, Officer Marshall? That's right, partner. Or as you'd call it, evidence. If you plan to pin me to this crime, then you'd better drop. Otherwise, you're just wasting my time. My steel horse is waiting to carry me back west into the sunset. One thing seems clear. Despite being responsible for guarding the evidence room, the witness doesn't appear to have seen anything. And Texans don't take orders from anyone. Everyone knows that. Apparently your superiors don't. Okay, I have a trump card up my sleeve, so I best keep my cool. Before I use it though, I'd better up the ante. Okay, so his statement before his last, Edgeworth didn't speak up. There's one contradiction. There's 3 security systems: the cameras, the ID card reader, and the lockers themselves. Oh yeah, and we do have your prints. So I'm just an innocent traveling man, so if you're out of ammo, it's time at the road. Great. Okay, what about... Objection! Officer Marshall? Doesn't it strike you as odd? That is, you being called in to testify like this. After all, you weren't in the security room at the time of the crime. And yet you dragged me down here. Explain yourself, partner. It's quite simple. You left a very large trail behind at the scene. Or to be exact, a handprint. Listen real good, partner. Like I said, I'm the caretaker of that crypt. I pay my respects, that is, make my rounds about once a month. You said you hadn't been in there in weeks. It's only natural my fingerprints would be in there. Your fingerprints in blood? I only wish it were, officer. But you see, your fingerprints were covered in blood. Witness, what is the meaning of this? Your blood-stained fingerprints were at the crime scene?
The blood was wiped away. However, a luminol test clearly revealed this. Well, Officer Marshall?
It seems to me there ain't a person in this room with a head on his shoulders.
I take it you have an explanation then, Officer Marshall? About the blood-stained fingerprints.
Very well, you may begin your testimony about your fingerprints, found at the scene of the crime. Like I said, it's only natural for my fingerprints to be in that evidence room, and one of them just happened to be in the same place as the bloodstained handprint. The murderer touched the locker where my fingerprint was by chance. The bloodstain and the fingerprint are completely unrelated. Or didn't you know the murderer was wearing gloves? You see, I had nothing to do with it.
How did you know about the gloves?
The witness's explanation appears valid, although there's room for doubt. Life wouldn't be fun without any doubt, partner. The defense may now cross-examine the witness.
This guy's hiding something. I can feel it. Now's my chance to prove it.
Okay.
That's because you, how'd you put it, pay your respects once a month?
Yeah, that's right. That and one more thing. That locker happens to be in mine. What? What do you mean? I mean what I said. That's the locker I used when I was a detective. The locker I still use. All that's in there now, though, is a heap of broken dreams.
I see.
It'd be strange if my prints weren't all over that locker.
Apparently his fingerprint data was never changed. He must have been using the fingerprint lock without even knowing it.
Okay, let me check that real quick.
The print... Okay, so it's just saying that, yeah, it was his locker. I thought we already knew that, but okay. So then, what about the bloody handprint?
It wasn't mine. It's no mystery. Please explain. My locker is covered with my fingerprints. It just so happened.
The chances of that happening are 1,000,000 to 1.
On the contrary, one could argue just the opposite. The chances of that not happening are 1,000,000 to 1. Get one thing straight, partner. You ain't gonna get no reward from me with a mere fingerprint. You wanna know why?
Unrelated.
They're as different as night and day. Kinda like cereal and cereal. One's got to do with breakfast, while the other's a type of murder. He's right. Although seemingly alike, they're totally different.
I don't see what homonyms have to do with this. How did you know about the murderer wearing gloves? How do you know that?
I may be a loner, but I'll still do my job. I keep up on the reports.
There was a blood stain at the scene, though, thought to be left by the murderer. That's right. It was found on Detective Gumshoe's locker. However, no fingerprints were detected on that handprint. Yeah, I think we tried that too.
So that would mean the murderer wearing gloves happened to place his hand on top of Officer Marshall's fingerprint. That's the only logical conclusion. Are you starting to get the picture, partner?
The picture?
This seal of blood in the desert is just food for the buzzards. There's only one reality, and that's this. Security tape. So long as my trail isn't in there, you can't say otherwise. This isn't getting us anywhere, Mr. Wright. Please consider carefully where you're going with this cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor.
Now then, continue your testimony, Mr. Officer Marshall. Mr. Officer Marshall.
Okay, so... he's banking on the fact that he wasn't in the video. Can't let him squirm out of this one. Gotta find something. Something decisive to tie Officer Marshall to this crime. So... one of them just happened to play. Murderer touched the locker where my fingerprint was by chance. Bloodstained and the fingerprint are completely unrelated. Murderer was wearing gloves. Too bad it wasn't me in the video, right, partner? I don't know about that. Let's... so... we know Jake's locker was opened because there was cloth in there. That wasn't previously at the end of the video. I wish I had a fast forward button on this one. They gave it to me earlier, but I mean, shit, Meekins just should have blown the megaphone in his ear. That would have disabled him. Yeah, the cloth isn't there. The murderer has disappeared. And now the cloth is there. So I'm gonna say if it's Jake, he would have known about the camera's sweep. So he would have known how to hide behind the blue badger to avoid the sweep. Maybe? I don't know. He might have also fucked with the video, but I'm gonna go with this. Your Honor. Well, really? Okay.
I'm not sure I follow.
Okay. Let's... wait, did I did press on that statement, didn't I? Or... no, I didn't. Okay. Oh, shit. Okay, that was probably the statement I needed to press on. What do you mean by that?
You want to tie me to this crime, isn't that right, partner? If so, that video is the only direct evidence you have.
But that video is next to useless. It's full of blind spots. Yeah, blind spots Jake would have known about. Places you can't see. The camera's panning back and forth. The floor isn't shown. Yeah, he could have crawled. If someone was familiar with the camera's position, he could leave the room without being caught on tape. We don't have time for your speculations, Mr. Wright.
Well, Mr. Wright, if you can show us evidence in this video that indicates Officer Marshall was present, please do so now.
Yeah, I'll point out the cloth. Allow me to point out your mistake, Officer Marshall. Tread carefully, Mr. Wright, or you might wind up being the one making the mistake.
Now then, let's have another look at the video. Show us this incriminating evidence in the witness, Officer Jake Marshall.
Yep, speed up real quick. It appears after Meekins gets in a fight. Meekins is down. And... boom. Bringing your attention back to the security camera is a mistake I'm afraid you'll not soon forget, Officer Marshall.
Days are short in Texas, and so are our tempers. Could you sum up what you have to say in 8 words or less?
Very well. You can clearly be seen in this video.
Exactly 8 words. Not bad, partner.
The key lies in a certain locker shown in the video. See this locker that has a
white cloth sticking out. And this is the witness's locker.
Why is the judge saying this? Now then, let's rewind the video a bit.
it's so slow. Yeah, but, you know, on the last pan, it wasn't there. Boom. Oh, the white cloth. It's gone. What's the meaning of this, Officer Marshall? When the crime took place, the white cloth wasn't there. Then, it suddenly appeared. There's only one explanation. Officer Marshall, you were in the evidence room at the time of the crime. What's more, you opened your locker when the camera was turned away. Order, order. It would seem— hold your horses. Sorry, partner, but you got the wrong man. So what if my locker was opened? That doesn't mean I'm the one who opened it. The murderer needed to hide something, so he opened the locker and stuck it in. It's not my fault he happened to choose mine. Well, how would he get it open? Why is everyone staring at me like I'm a wanted man? This guy isn't just plain dumb. He really doesn't know. I hate to rain on your parade, but you're the only person who can open that particular locker. Oh yeah? I'll call your bluff. You say you opened that locker. Now prove it. It's a fingerprint locker, dude. We explained this. Fingerprint sensor? We talked about this earlier today. The lockers can only be opened by the detectives they belong to. What kind of crazy talk is this? Well, Detective Gumshoe did mention something about this. In any case, the locks aren't that obvious. There's even some people in the force that don't know about the fingerprint locks. So, Sheriff, what do you have to say in 8 words or less? He's got some jerky. I only got 1 word for you, partner. No! Order, order, order. Witness, explain yourself. If this is a joke, it's the worst I've ever heard. I assure you that this is no joke, Officer Marshall. Now then, please tell us what you were doing in the evidence room at the time of the crime. Olay, please answer the question. Is he now a bullfighter? That's alright, Officer Marshall. I believe we can figure out the rest from here. We can? Have a look at these floor plans. There's no place for someone to hide in the evidence room. Yet Officer Meekins didn't see Officer Marshall. If that's so, then where was the witness? It seems Mr. Wright has an answer. That's right. The only possible conclusion. Well then, let's hear it. Where was Officer Marshall at the time of the crime? Booyah. Officer Marshall was standing right here. There, but that's where the victim, Detective Goodman, was. Correct, unless the man wasn't Detective Goodman. I believe the victim in the video is Officer Marshall. It was you, dressed up like Detective Goodman. But that's preposterous. Officer Meekins witnessed the detective at the crime scene. No, he didn't. He said he didn't get a good look. Once he saw the man's face, he'd know for sure. May I point out, though, that Officer Meekins did not know Detective Goodman. He also testified about the man's reaction when confronted. Plus, he said he was the kind of guy who didn't look people in the face. When I entered the evidence room, I asked him to show his card, sir. Yes? How did Detective Goodman respond? Oh, fuck you, Meekins! He suddenly pulled a knife on me. God damn it. You were right, Sprawl. I should have believed you. There was a surprise, Meekins. Something about the officer's story puzzled me. If the man had his ID card, why didn't he just show it? Yes, he would have needed it to enter the evidence room, so he must have been carrying it. The answer is simple. He couldn't show it. As you can see, Detective Goodman's picture is on his ID card. Oh, I get it. If he showed that, his cover would have been blown. Officer Meekins would have realized the man wasn't Detective Goodman. Do you have anything to say to this, Officer Marshall? You've got quite an imagination, partner. We got a term for that. It's called circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial evidence? He's still denying it. You're gonna have to do better than that to break a detective. Unless you have hard evidence proving I dressed up as the victim. I can't say I particularly care for your uncooperative disposition. I can't say I care for your beard, but you don't see me complaining. Dude, what's your problem with the beard? Well, Mr. Wright, do you have any evidence? Any evidence proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that Officer Marshall dressed up as the victim?
Well, who am I kidding? I don't have anything like that.
I can see the fear in your eyes, partner. Seems you're the one who couldn't take the desert heat.
This can't be happening. It's so obvious he's the one. What can I do? It looks like your lack of experience has finally been exposed. I'll pass on to you what someone told me when I was just starting out. When you've run into a wall with no place to go, return to the basics.
The basics?
For me, that would be what Mia used to tell me. Nick, try thinking outside of the box. Shouldn't look for proof that Officer Marshall was in disguise, but rather I should look for evidence that came about because he was in disguise. Why do you think this locker was open in the first place?
What do you mean?
There's no reason for Officer Marshall to open his locker at the time of the crime. Yet he did, despite the chance it might be discovered later as it has been. Which means he didn't originally plan to open his locker. No, he used it to wipe off the blood.
According to the defense's argument, Officer Jake Marshall dressed up as Detective Goodman at the time of the crime. Then, after the crime was committed, he opened his own locker for some unknown reason.
He did it to wipe off the blood. The fact that a white cloth was sticking out of the locker seems to indicate that he opened it in order to put the cloth inside.
So, just what exactly is this piece of cloth?
It's the jacket! It's Goodman's jacket. Perhaps the video is the key to all our unanswered questions. I don't have any evidence, so this video is my only shot.
Very well, let's take yet another look at the security tape. After committing the crime, the witness opened the locker to put away the white cloth. And please show us why the witness had to open his locker.
Because of the blood on the coat. Okay, so go to when he and Meekins were fighting. Because Meekins got his hand cut. Oh. There. For some reason, you disguised yourself as Detective Goodman and entered the evidence room. I don't know what that reason was yet. However, something unexpected happened. Officer Meekins barged in on you. When asked to show your ID card, you pulled a knife on him. However, Officer Meekins panicked, and the white coat you were using was soiled with blood.
Bloody white coat?
You couldn't just walk out like that, so you hid the coat in your locker.
Not bad, huh, partner? Now then, Officer Marshall, are you ready to tell us the truth?
Looks like I underestimated y'all. I hope you're happy now, Mr. Edgeworth.
2 years ago, if you were only half as persistent then as you are today, we all wouldn't have had to be here now, would we?
Officer Marshall, tell the court what you did. All of it.
Alright. Seems the time has come. I had to do it that day. I couldn't just stand by and let it die. I stole the detective's ID and dressed like him. I planned to take out the evidence. I wasn't expecting Officer Meekins. I knocked him out, and managed to escape. I knew which areas wouldn't be caught in the camera. There wasn't any murder in the evidence room at 5:15. So, the supposed victim was really you.
But there's one thing I still don't understand. Large quantities of blood traces were found on the floor of the evidence room. If no one was murdered, then how could that be?
Officer Meekins managed to cut his own hand. My guess is he's the donor.
It looked like too much blood for that.
Yeah, there was a shit ton of blood, but I don't know. Okay. When you say it, you mean... Do you even have to ask, partner? The Sl9 Incident. 2 years have passed since that case was closed. It was going to completely end with the transferal that day. Not if I have anything to do with it. That incident's not over. But what did you hope to accomplish by sneaking into the evidence room? When a case is closed, only the detective who was in charge of it can look through the evidence. I wanted to have a look at it myself one more time, no matter what the cost. I don't care what anyone says, partner. That case is mine. But Officer Marshall wasn't in charge of that investigation. Why does he care so much about it? And that day was my last chance. That's why I stole the detective's ID and dressed like him. Why did you disguise yourself as Detective Goodman? And if I didn't make it look like Goodman was carrying out the evidence transferal, I'd be arrested for stealing evidence, which wouldn't get me anywhere. So you did it to fool the security camera? And the detective's ID card? I stole that the morning of the incident. So that really was why why Goodman started filling out that lost item report. I returned his ID card. I left it on the floor in the prosecutor's office parking lot. The ID card I found was left there by Officer Marshall. So essentially, you managed to succeed despite your lack of foresight. What do you mean, partner? I mean the fingerprint-activated lock, of course. No matter how well you disguise yourself, you can't change your fingerprints. Normally, that locker shouldn't have opened. So it opened because a rubber glove was stuck in the door by chance? Then, Detective Goodman must have opened that locker before Officer Marshall. I wasn't expecting Officer Meekins. I knocked him out. You pulled a knife on Officer Meekins and tried to drive him off? Let's just say I was a little surprised. I only planned on being in the evidence room for no more than 5 minutes. I didn't think anyone would actually come in during that short time. Officer Meekins certainly is a one-in-a-million type person. Mistaking a detective for an intruder and demanding to be shown his ID. I'll have to think a little more about his raise this year. When did Edgeworth get so much influence? Anyway, he threw himself at me, and I ended up cutting him slightly. I'm sorry it had to turn out that way, with me knocking him out and everything. By the way, what happened to your knife? Oh, you mean this one? I don't know what to say. So what happened next? Which areas wouldn't be complicated? Yeah, kind of figured that one out. So you did your research beforehand. Those who go into the desert unprepared don't live long, partner. I didn't think it would make a difference, though. Security tape is erased every 6 hours. If all had gone as planned, no footage would have been left. However, you bloodied your coat in your struggle with Officer Meekins. If someone was in the security room when I came out, the jig would have been up. I opened my locker and stashed it in there. What was Officer Meekins doing during that time? What else? He was sleeping like a baby. So what you're saying is on that day. Yeah. I mean, we knew that from the start. But the blood found at the scene certainly indicates a crime took place. What are you, blind? The victim shown in that tape is me, and I'm not dead yet, partner. So you stole the evidence from the locker. Actually, no, I didn't. Why not? When I opened the locker, the evidence was already gone. What? Mr. Edgeworth, where is that evidence? It's still missing, Your Honor. Yeah, who is Lucky Number 7s who took everything beforehand? Is that Gant? So he seems to have been playing this thing, like, as best he can. Detective Goodman's locker was already empty? Someone else stole the evidence. Officer Marshall, may I ask you one thing? Fire away, partner. It's a free country. Just remember, I'm also free to decide whether or not to answer. Oh no, you're kind of not. You're a witness. So why did you do this? Stealing a detective's ID? Injuring a police officer? This is no small offense. Moreover, you're an officer yourself. This will have serious consequences. Can't just be forgiven with a simple cut in salary. Not that salary cuts are were ever a valid solution. Like I said, this isn't your case. This one is mine. And I'll do anything it takes to get an answer I'm satisfied with. The witness has an unusual amount of zeal. Let's hear more. Can't just forget the Sl9 incident. But that case was solved 2 years ago, wasn't it? That's the reason the evidence was stored in the evidence room. Joe Dark was convicted for those crimes. One thing I can say for sure, he deserved his sentence. I remember the Joe Dark case. It involved serial murders, didn't it? I don't intend to complain about how it turned out. There's something that still bothers me. Something went down at that trial. Something no one will talk about. What happened? I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Why is he so concerned with that incident? Maybe I should present him with what I think his real reason is. I had a feeling he'd wind up here sooner or later. Everyone involved here is related in some way to that case. I better take another look at the files. I had to do it that day. Okay, so we know that I wonder if the reason Lana and Emma were on the case was because Joe Dark murdered their parents. When you say it, you mean... You even have to ask, partner. The Sl9 incident. Oh, okay, so no, it's just going over this again. Okay, so that was... Oh, that was the start of it, okay. So... Yeah. Okay, let me have a look. Okay, Sl9. Criminal Joe Dark, crime serial murder, sentenced death. Edward Jones, Jason Knight, Edith Kirby, Rachel Mosh, Jeff Bates, Neil Marshall? Oh. I might have not noticed that before. Okay, so it's just the case. Wasn't any murder. I can't just forget the. You know why? I think I just figured out why. Objection! Officer Marshall, I think I understand. I think I know why you care so much about the Sl9 incident. Sounds like you've been sipping too much cactus juice, partner. I have the Sl9 incident file here. The name Marshall is mentioned in here. And a list of murder victims. Neil Marshall, are you related to this man? Neil Marshall? Yeah, I'm sure you've heard the name. 2 years ago. He was the other cowboy. He received the same lousy prosecutor award you got. What? Our prosecutor? You must be talking about the King of Prosecutors Award. Now I remember. Prosecutor Neil Marshall. He handled the Sl9 case before I did. That's right. He was killed. And the case fell into your hands. What's his relation to you? He was my brother. He was investigating the murders with Damon Gant, chief detective at the time. Yeah, I did wonder who the second, like, cowboy guy in the bottom left there was. The group of detectives I was a part of worked under them. We were desperate to prosecute the killer. Yeah, he looks pretty creepy. Joe Dark. My brother fought Dark and was killed. That was the first time Dark left behind any evidence. That was all we needed. He was arraigned and incarcerated. The case was finally closed. At least, according to the public records. What do you mean? My brother couldn't have been killed by Joe Dart. I knew my brother better than anyone. No one could have beaten him in a fight. And that's it. That's your reason for your insane actions. There's more to my brother's death than what the records say. No matter how much you try to hide it, you can't fool me. Well, at least one thing for certain. Now we know what happened at the police department on the day of the crime. Perhaps the last day the Sl9 Incident case could be reopened. Not satisfied with its resolution, Officer Marshall planned to steal the evidence. Disguising himself as Detective Goodman, he entered the evidence room. Officer Meekins confronted him, so he rendered him unconscious and fled. Yes, this mystery has finally been cleared up. No murder took place at the police department that day. So why was Gant so insistent on it? Things that happen by chance never cease to amaze. At exactly the same time as the murder at the prosecutor's office, this fake murder was going on at the police department. Chance? It's gotta be more than that. So if no one was murdered at the police department on the day of the crime, that means the murder in the prosecutor's office parking lot was the real one. Which, in turn, means only one person could have committed the crime. Chief Prosecutor Lana Skye. But wait, a verdict wasn't reached in yesterday's trial. Which is why we examined the incident at the police department today. But there's only one reason the defendant was not convicted yesterday. There yet remained the mystery of the simultaneous murder at the police department. It seems to me, this boy's got the draw on you, partner. All the mysteries at the police department have been uncovered. No contradictions remain. The murder took place at the prosecutor's office. The only suspect is Lana Skye. There were no errors in the testimony of the witness, Angel Stark. Dude. There were a shit ton of errors. We called them all out. If you have a response, make it one word or less. Ah! I rest my case. It seems this trial is reaching its conclusion. There's no room for doubt. Well done, Mr. Wright. Thanks to you, I didn't need to waste my time disproving the alleged murder at the police department. There's no doubt what I proved today is true. The apparent murder on the security camera's tape really was fake. But I didn't realize that would end up proving Lana guilty. Now then, the time for the verdict has come. The court finds the defendant. Hold it. That's Emma. Yep. She reached up, grabbed Marshall, just tossed him to the floor, and stood in his place. Your Honor, wait. Emma. The defense has an objection. A scientific objection. Emma, you're not in the defense. Right? What do you mean, right? Mr. Wright, are you this girl's guardian? Your Honor. Oh, in a sense. Please, Your Honor. All I'm asking for is a minute of your time. Please hear me out. Mr. Edgeworth, please. I don't want to leave any loose ends. You want a minute? I'll give you 3. Wow, so generous, dude. I was kind of in shock. I mean, finding out that the Sl9 incident referred to the Joe Dart killings. Now that she mentions it, the names of both Skye's sisters were in that file. But that's when I figured it out. I mean, what Officer Marshall was trying to do that day. Okay, their parents' names weren't listed in that, so that the earlier thought I had was like, they can't be it. So I knew his fingerprint had nothing to do with the crime. That left only one thing. The other handprint. You mean the traces of blood found in Detective Gumshoe's locker? But no fingerprints were found on it, right? No, but I figured if I examined it scientifically, I'd be sure to find a clue. So I ran over there and looked at it again. So, did you find something? No. Huh? Sorry. I guess I'm not much of a scientific investigator after all. Emma, how did you get in with an ID card? Is that all?
Please don't be mad. I'm just a high school student.
I'm just an attorney.
But Mr. Wright, those traces of blood are the only clue we have. If we can't find something wrong with them, please, Mr. Wright, you're a professional. If anyone can save Lana, it's you.
Me?
Oh boy.
Time's up. Now then, Mr. Wright. With regard to the incident at the police department, does any reasonable doubt remain? It appears the defense is troubled by the other blood mark. Yeah, if Jake wasn't wearing gloves, then who left the one without prints? Looking at the floor plans, a handprint was discovered around here. Is there a problem with this?
Mr. Wright, I'm sorry I can't be of more use. But still, if you can't find anything wrong with that blood mark, Lana will be...
Please answer my question, Mr. Wright. We don't have all day.
Yes, Your Honor.
If ever I needed to concentrate, it's now. What could be wrong with that handprint on Detective Gumshoe's locker? Could there be something I'm missing? Yeah. Yeah, why does that one not have prints? This handprint left at the crime scene clearly shows a contradiction. The only thing that seems to be clear is that you're grasping, Mr. Wright. You've been staring pretty intently at those floor plans. Tell me, is there a problem with them? Yes, this is strange. Take a good look at these floor plans. Something is missing. Missing? You mean something hasn't been drawn on there? Yes, something that when drawn will completely change the meaning of the blood mark. Let us pray the defense isn't simply trying to buy time. Very well, Mr. Wright. All this evidence here. There's gotta be something I can use. The question is, which item can prove something is missing in the floor plans? The badger? Yeah, the badger's the only thing I can think of. There's also the vase. Like, how does the vase tie into all this? So... Okay, so the blue badger was blocking view. So the blue badger was blocking view, but there was also the unstable jar. Where was this in all of that? Okay, I'm gonna say... I don't think it's the blue badger panel, or the blue badger panel. I don't think it's the vase, because the vase would have been up here in the upper right. And, you know, it didn't seem to get knocked over in the fight. I don't know, maybe it just wasn't there. But the main thing is that the blue badger panel was blocking the view of that locker. Like, and totally. And what about that piece of plywood? The Blue Badger, mascot of the police force, defender of truth, guardian of proof. Explain yourself, Mr. Wright. Please look at the floor plans of the crime scene. The Blue Badger is not here. So watch what happens when we put him in. Yeah, he eats up so much of the camera view. This is where he was dancing at the time of the crime. Well, what? That's right. So long as the Blue Badger is dancing here, it would be impossible to place a handprint at this spot on the locker. Oh, right, because Goodman walked around, or Jake walked around it in front of it. So that means... just what exactly does that mean? It means it can't be done. So what do you say? Blood traces were undeniably found in the locker. Don't look at me. I didn't put it there. Mr. Wright, think it through scientifically. Emma. On that afternoon, Officer Meekins was the one who brought the Blue Badger into the evidence room, right? After he put it down, it would be impossible to leave a handprint on the locker. So that must mean this blood mark was left there before the Blue Badger was brought in. Yeah, by the guy with the weird sevens. Now, just one moment. I will not allow such far-fetched balderdash in my courtroom. It may sound far-fetched, Your Honor, but it's the only possible explanation. On February 21st, in the police department's evidence room, blood was spilled not once, but twice. But how? One time was captured on this tape, taken by the security camera. Officer Meekins cut his hand, from which a trivial amount of blood fell. Problem is, the other time, someone bled prior to the struggle shown on this tape. It had to have been Detective Goodman when he was really murdered. That's ridiculous. I refute you. The murder portrayed in the security tape has been proven to be a fake. However, that does not explain the blood mark found on the locker. So then, assuming this murder you purport really happened, when did it take place? I demand you show evidence that proves it occurred. When did the first incident occur? To surmise, the defense claims that prior to Officer Meekins being cut by Jake Marshall, who was disguised as Detective Goodman, another incident took place in the evidence room. The blood mark on the locker proves this. Very well, then tell us, when did this first incident occur? Proof must be presented. Proof that shows when the murder took place. There's only one piece of evidence that can show that. Now then, will the defense please present its evidence? What shows when the first crime took place?
I know what it is.
Boom, 4:20 p.m. All sevens. The crime took place inside the evidence room, and the perpetrator would have had to have entered the room. In order to do so, an ID card is required. An ID card? Oh, the ID card record. Officer Meekins brought the Blue Badger panel into the evidence room at, let's see here, 4:50 p.m. If the crime took place before that time, then it would be 4:40 p.m. Miles Edgeworth, just what have you done? I never figured you had nerve, boy. Put off the act, witness. It doesn't take a lot of thought to figure it out. It couldn't have been me. Nope, I ain't getting it. I'm afraid I don't understand either. Judge! It's clear from the luminol test that blood was there. However, when the second crime took place, both Officer Meekins and Officer Marshall failed to notice the blood, so it had been wiped clean. That means the blood from the first crime was wiped away by the real murderer. I would have had just 10 minutes to murder the victim, carry his body away, and clean up the blood. Unfortunately, that's physically impossible. And that would mean the crime must have taken place before Mr. Edgeworth entered the evidence room. Let's look at the chart again. There's only one other card number remaining. Lucky number 7s. Talk about a lucky number. But wait, that doesn't make sense. How could Officer Goodman have entered the evidence room? Since there's no record of his card being used beforehand, he must have entered along with the real murderer. That's the only plausible explanation. He went in with 7s. Mr. Edgeworth, please look into this ASAP. Find out whose ID number is 777777777. That's 17 too many, Your Honor. Unfortunately, I'm unable to look up the owner of that ID card. At least, at present. What? Explain yourself, son. The ID card number 77s belongs to someone with the rank of captain or higher. Yeah, Gant. Someone who is a so-called executive officer. We don't have the authority to inquire into such a person's identity. Freaking police. But that's ridiculous. Just how? That's police. I'm not finished talking, Mr. Wright. There is one situation in which we can be granted such authority. If an official charge filed against an executive is accepted. An official charge? You're all alack, aren't you? With your cover-ups and your forgeries. That's how the prosecutor office operates. I take pride in my work, Officer Marshall. I would appreciate it if you would keep your slander to yourself. Slander, is it? Okay, let me ask you a question. Huh? No, not you. To her, the defendant sitting over there. Your own little executive.
Lana?
Don't be stupid. She's been charged with murder. Of course, we've looked up her ID number, and it's not 7s. Don't play me for a fool, partner. That's not what I want to ask. All I want to know is one thing about that incident. The Sl9 incident? Answer me this, Chief Prosecutor. In that trial 2 years ago, did you really only use legitimate evidence? Do you need the witness to repeat his question, Chief Prosecutor? I heard him fine, Mr. Edgeworth. 2 years ago, I was in charge of the prosecution for that trial. At the time, we felt the powerlessness of the law. At least, I did. Oh no.
Lana?
I became a prosecutor in order to suppress crime with the law. But before I realized it, we were the ones being suppressed by the law. Defendant, just what are you saying? I'll ask you again, Chief Prosecutor. During that trial 2 years ago, did you really present all the evidence in court? Can you look me, an investigator in that crime, in the eye and say that you did? Chief Prosecutor, you didn't. I don't have to, Officer Marshall. Why don't you answer him? Drastic crimes require drastic measures. That's just the way it is. We did what we had to, in order for him to get the verdict he deserved.
But Lana?
Even if it involved forging evidence. Uh-oh.
Lana, you're admitting to so many crimes here.
See? That's what I'm talking about.
No. No!
Order! 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 Order!
Order!
Lana's remarks caused such a stir that the chaos in the courtroom could not be quelled. The conclusion of the trial would have to wait until the following day. To be continued. Oy.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Wright. I'm sorry for what my sister said.
Drastic crimes require drastic measures. That's just the way it is. We did what we had to, in order for him to get the verdict he deserved.
I didn't know. I never knew that the Sl9 incident was just another name for the Joe Dark killings.
Sounds like everyone's heard of these killings but me.
Lana wanted Dark convicted so badly. That's why she used me. Why she used what happened to me.
What do you mean, what happened to you?
It's all there in the file.
No, it isn't.
Joe Dark's last victim was Prosecutor Near Marshall. When he murdered Officer Marshall's brother, he left behind an incriminating piece of evidence.
But what did you have to do with those killings, Emma?
On the night Prosecutor Near Marshall was murdered, Joe Dark tried to kill me.
What?
He tried to kill you! Officer Marshall's brother, Neil, was only trying to save me. So that means you. Yes, I was a witness in the Joe Dark trial.
Didn't see that one coming.
Phoenix, did you not read the file?
I did.
It happened 2 years ago. It was right about this time of year. There was a terrible thunderstorm that day, unusual for the season. I was alone in my sister's office. We were planning to eat dinner together once she finished her work.
Was it hamburgers?
Then suddenly, this terrifying man came bursting into the office. Joe Dark. It seemed like he was running from someone. He pulled out a knife and screamed at me. I didn't know what was going on. Just then, Prosecutor Marshall showed up.
Jake Marshall's brother. Joe Dark tried to take me hostage, but before he could, Mr. Marshall tackled him. And then, what happened? I'll never forget it. Lightning struck, and the lights went out. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning flashed outside the window, lighting up the office for just an instant. What I saw then burned a permanent picture in my mind. I can still see it now. Permanent picture? I don't remember the moment when Dark stabbed Mr. Marshall. So you weren't able to testify about that? No, I was only asked about it when I was attacked. And that must be why she made up the crime. Made it up? You mean provided bogus evidence? The prosecutor's office wanted that guilty verdict so badly. Lana forged the evidence and Mr. Edgeworth used it. Edgeworth? Yes, but I'm sure he didn't know anything about it. He couldn't have known he was being given false evidence. Even so, that's when it all started. The rumors about Mr. Edgeworth, I mean. It's all my fault. If I could have just testified properly, none of this would happen. So it's true, even though you may not have known it. Edgeworth really was involved in falsifying evidence. After that case ended, Lana was never the same. She became cold, like she is today. She must not have been able to face up to what she did, especially not to Emma. What did you see in the instant that crime occurred? Dark knocked down Mr. Marshall and raised his knife. Neil Marshall was stabbed right in front of this poor girl. I don't remember what happened after that. Apparently I passed out. Well, if he stabbed Marshall, why didn't Dark finish the job? When I came to, Lana was cradling me in her arms. Poor Emma. Been through so much. I couldn't bring myself to testify about that incident. I tried, but the words just wouldn't come out. I drew a picture, but it wasn't any good. 2 years ago. You must have been 14. Understandable. Once it was all over, I made up my mind. I decided that when I grew up I'd become a scientific investigator. I want to be able to fight crime with my testimonies, and find the evidence to make an airtight case. That way Lana would never have to forge any. I see. I think I'm finally starting to understand what makes Emma tick. But there's still something that bothers me about that crime. There's something that's puzzling me, Emma. What is it? You said you were in Lana's office at the time, right? That's right. Why then would a serial killer come running in there? Not only that, but he was being chased by a prosecutor? Oh, there's no mystery there. Joe Dark had been taken in for questioning that day. Taken in for questioning? You mean by the police? Of course. This happened at the police department. He tried to run away halfway through the interview and fled into my sister's office. But why did he run all the way over to your sister's office? Because the detective offices in the questioning room are right across from the elevator. Across from the elevator? But Lana was the chief prosecutor, wasn't she? No, silly. Didn't I tell you? 2 years ago, Lana was a detective. She was the best in the entire force. What? That's news to me. Well, it did say she was an investigator. After the Joe Dark case, she was transferred to the prosecutor's office and made chief prosecutor. I used to be a detective? Better have another talk with her. Lana! Lana! Can you please stop saying stuff that makes it harder to defend you? Mr. Wright, it seems I keep causing you trouble. Falsifying evidence? I didn't think you were the type. Criminals don't mind playing foul, why should we? But Lana, if you're wrong, an innocent person might be found guilty. Believe me, I understand the risks. Lana, Emma told me about you. Oh? About how you were a detective 2 years ago? And how the Sl9 incident was the reason for your transfer to the prosecutor's office. That's right. Could you fill me in on the details, especially about that unusual change of jobs? I suppose you have a right to know, Mr. Wright. A lot of revelations were uncovered at the trial today, not the least of which was the fact that this case is largely connected to another one 2 years ago. Evidence from that case was stolen. I expected as much. I know how obsessive Officer Marshall can be. That trial, it really wasn't fair, was it? I believed in you, Lana. I believed that no matter what happened, you'd always stick to the truth. It couldn't be helped, Emma. At that trial 2 years ago, I sold my soul. All drama aside, the fact of the matter is at 5:15 there was no murder at the police department.
Tell me it's not true, Lana. What Miss Starr said? About you stabbing Mr. Goodman with a knife. Lana, I don't understand. Why won't you tell us?
Emma, this doesn't involve just me. I don't think I've ever seen Lana look so fazed before. Just me? It's true, I was a member of the police force 2 years ago.
She was amazing.
Her and Gant.
They still talk about all the cases she and Chief Gant cracked together.
Chief Gant? Then he was the vice head of criminal affairs, but he still worked the crime scenes. Damon Gant. He was everything I aspired to be.
They were the best team ever. They solved crimes before the reports could even be filed.
I really idolized her big sister. But now you're chief prosecutor. What happened? I always planned on becoming a prosecutor. The reason I became a detective was
to gain experience investigating crime scenes, so you could later use that experience in court.
Gant's help in the Sl9 case was critical in its resolution. After that, he became chief of police and arranged my transfer to the prosecutor's office. Maybe I should ask more about this investigation of theirs 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I was second in command of the detectives investigating Dark. Second in command? Means the chief detective was no doubt Damon Gant. Yes, Detective Gant and I shared the same office and same investigations. They even had the same office. We led a team of the best detectives on the force. So was Dark going to kill Gant? Detective Goodman, whose case it was, Jake Marshall, and Angel Starr. It was the first time Marshall worked with his brother. He was quite gung-ho. Without a doubt, Joe Dark was a serial killer. We asked him to come in for questioning. We were desperate for evidence. That was when the last murder took place. When he tried to murder Emma. Prosecutor Marshall was trying to save me from Dark. You see, the first person who happened upon the scene of the crime was me. Now you tell us. Detective Gant and Prosecutor Marshall were the ones questioning Dark that day. The investigation was in its final states when Dark must have panicked. He waited until Gant and Marshall let their guards down, then fled the room. From there, he ran straight to the office shared by Detective Gant and myself. That's where he found me. So you were the first person to run to the scene, Lana. It appears so. I was filing some papers while Gant and Marshall were questioning Dark. When I returned to my office, I saw 3 bodies on the floor and smelled blood. Wait, 3? 3 bodies? Prosecutor Marshall, the victim, Emma, who had passed out, and the suspect, Joe Dark. During the struggle, it seems that Mr. Marshall struck a final blow before he died. What, in his back? Joe Dark had incurred a minor concussion and lay unconscious. What did you do? To be honest, I panicked. Yeah, it looks like... I don't want to say Gant did it without, getting all the details, but it's looking really fucking suspicious that Gant was the criminal here. I picked up Emma, carried her out of the room, and just held her. Can't blame her, after all her sister must have gone through. After that, I placed Dark under immediate arrest. Let me get this straight. You were all involved in the Sl9 incident. That's right. Quite a coincidence, I don't buy it. What are you saying? There's no way everyone involved in this trial just was also involved in that incident just by chance.
But that case was solved 2 years ago.
At least one person went to extremes because they didn't believe it was truly solved. Officer Marshall. Yes, his actions came as a surprise to me as well. Ever since his brother died, he's changed completely. I guess he wasn't convinced with the ruling against Joe Dark. Yeah, and why were all the detectives, like, either kicked off the force or given shit details? Life doesn't end with the closing of a case. Everyone has to live the rest of their lives with their memories. Yeah, even Lana was kicked off. Like, yeah, she was ported over to the prosecutor's office. That case might not have been over yet. Emma was assaulted by Dark at the police department, right? Yes, in the office that Damon Gant and I shared. The office that Mr. Gant now occupies by himself, the chief's office. Maybe we should have a look at the chief's office, the site of the final Sl9 murder. Yeah, Gant got everyone away from everyone else who was on the case away from him. Things seem kind of quiet around here today. You're right. The head of the department seems the same, though. Why don't we go look for some other people to talk to? Right. We can come back here later. Oh, I guess... no? Howdy, Bambina. Oh, Mr. Marshall. I never thought things had turned out this way when I woke up this morning. Que sera, sera. You never know where life will lead you, eh, Bambina? I should have known my luck had run out when old Billy dried up this morning. Billy? Must have been his pet cactus. Say, where are you headed? I'm just over to the prosecutor's office for a little interrogation. It's a voluntary appearance, but we all know I won't be coming back. Sorry, but you can't go in the evidence room today, partner. But Mr. Marshall, why did you do it? Why do prospectors head west? If ever there was a case, I need to know the truth about it. It was that one. Before you turn yourself in, Mr. Marshall, would you mind telling us exactly what happened? Looks like I won't be getting that steak lunch today. Something was fishy about that trial from the beginning. It wasn't just me either. All the detectives thought so. What do you mean fishy? Some of the facts reported were inconsistent with the evidence we found. For example, the murder weapon. Murder weapon? You mean that switchblade knife with the broken tip? That was Joe Dark's alright. But in the initial autopsy report, a question was raised. Question? The blade of the knife was not a perfect match with the wound the victim sustained. And what does that mean? It means there's a good chance that the knife was not the murder weapon. However, in the report that was finally submitted, that possibility had been erased. Could the facts have been concealed with forged evidence? Phoenix, we know it was. That case left behind scars on all of us. The scars that the Sl9 incident left behind. I got the looks, but he got the brains. He was one of the best prosecutors around. I had just made detective when it went down. It was our first case together. How old was he? Your brother? He was 27 at the time. He was awarded the highest honor that very day. The highest honor? You don't mean... King of Prosecutors. Oh, not that again. Well, what are you looking at me like that for? That's an honor for a prosecutor. Mr. Marshall must have been really close with his brother. The day the Sl9 incident took place, that wasn't the same day as... That's right. It was the same day of the evidence transferal. Interesting. It was drizzling that morning, and by nightfall there was thunder. Can't believe 2 years had gone by already. I tried to steal the evidence so the case wouldn't die. Apparently someone tried to stop you. Detective Goodman was murdered, and the evidence locker was empty. There was something going on behind the scenes in that case. We all knew that later. Every detective involved in that investigation, save one, was taken care of. Miss Starr was fired, I was demoted and boxed away in a tiny room. And what about Detective Goodman? If they did something to him, too, the commissioners would get suspicious. No, they were careful enough not to be too obvious. They?
Who are you talking about?
Don't get upset, Bambina. I mean Damon Gant and Lana Skye.
No, Skye was kicked out too.
Just not in an obvious way. Chief Detective Damon Gant and his second-in-command, Lana Skye. There wasn't a person on the force who hadn't heard of that duo. That case was the biggest step in both their careers. After the case ended, Lana transferred to the prosecutor's office, right? Yeah, and Damon Gant, the new chief of police, arranged for that to happen.
Yeah, to get her out of the way.
And she's never been the same since she left. Everyone who knew her said so. Chief Prosecutor Skye was totally different when she was a detective.
Now that he mentions it, Emma said something like that too. Tell me, what happened to my sister?
Sorry, Bambina, but her secret is too well guarded. I never found out.
Lana's secret? All started 2 years ago.
So there you have it. That's my story. Did you enjoy it, partner?
It was certainly enlightening.
There's one thing for sure I found out in court today. That boy Edgeworth isn't my enemy. He was the one who used falsified evidence to get a guilty verdict. But someone else was the one who gave him that evidence and planned everything. That someone is Damon Gant. Don't believe me? Well, I don't blame you. I won't even be a patrolman after today. Too bad I won't be around to work with you when you become a real scientific investigator. Adios, Bambina.
See you, Cop Cowboy.
Okay, well...
Hey, Angel, you there?
No one's here. Not even Miss Starr.
Everyone's probably busy looking at what exactly went down in the evidence room. That must be where the detectives are. But we proved in court today that no one was murdered in the evidence room at 5:15 p.m. on the day of the crime. Yeah, I thought we were finally making some headway in our case. But instead it looks like we just ended up making Lana look even more guilty. Hang in there, Lana. I gotta find all the answers by tomorrow.
Okay, so...
I can't imagine Edgeworth will give us anything, but, Mr. Edgeworth isn't... Oh, well, I guess he's not here. Maybe he's being questioned by an inquiry committee. He took a real beating in court today. Yeah, with Lana admitting to falsifying evidence 2 years ago. I guess we'll just have to come back later.
Okay,
As the criminal department? Because I've talked to Lana. Like, I've gotten 4 questions with her, and that seems to be the max, if nothing else. Hey, Gumshoe, you there? This place is always pretty empty, but today it's deserted. That must mean everyone's busy solving crimes. Oh, if you're looking for the others, they're all in the conference room. Thanks? He actually talked to us. With the chief prosecutor saying what she did and the decision about what to do about Mr. Edgeworth, not to mention our statement to the media on tomorrow's trial. There's more chaos going on than Thanksgiving and Christmas put together. I think festive is the word actually used for those. Sir? We'd like to have a look around to Chief Gant's office. Just head across the hall to the other building and take the elevators to the top floor. Really? You mean it's okay for us to go there? I mean, we aren't police officers or anything. Hey, you're right. You can't go in there. It's off limits. Now I see where Detective Gumshoe gets his unique charm. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's head to the chief's office. Oh yeah, if you want to go to the office, just go this way. Wait a second, you can't go that way. Okay, let's go that way. What the hell, dude?
Is this Vegnagun? Why do you have a pipe organ in your office? Oh my god, it's even got scary, like, Castlevania music. Whoa, where am I? In the chief's office, silly? At least that's what it said on the door. Check out that pipe organ. That's real, isn't it? Hey, I used to take organ lessons in kindergarten. You what? They used to call me Little Miss Bach. Why were you playing an organ in kindergarten? I thought I was a genius until they tried to teach me the notes. Never could remember where C was. Hmm? Oh, it's you two. Chief Gant. He put that paper he was reading in his desk. So, Mr. Wright, have you been swimming lately? No, I haven't. I've been kind of busy lately. I can appreciate that. I've had my hands full too with Mr. Marshall's misconduct and Lana's provocative statement. Provocative statement? Oh, you mean about the forged evidence? 2 years have passed since that incident. My, how time flies. See that big picture on the wall over there? I like the golden suit of armor over there. That's a picture of Lana, Neil, and me. So this is Mr. Marshall's brother, Prosecutor Neil Marshall. We took it to commemorate our work together. Something's not right with this picture. Oh hey, it's the vase! The broken one. Can't quite seem to put my finger on it though. I'm not sure what else was wrong, but I see that broken vase in the background. Or the vase that is now broken. Anyway, I'd like to reminisce all day, but there are matters that need my attention. I'm going to lock up here, so let's go out together. Oh, but this office... It was a crime scene 2 years ago, wasn't it? Oh, that case has long been over. There's no need to investigate it anymore. All the same, we'd still like to have a look around. Perhaps you didn't hear me. I said there's no need to investigate it anymore. Now hurry up and get out. I have a meeting to attend. It's like, get the fuck out of my office. Looks like we aren't welcome. Seems that case isn't over with yet, after all. What do you mean? Chief Gant denied our request to search the crime scene. That means there must be a reason he doesn't want us looking around in there. You mean like a clue? There's gotta be a way we can get inside the chief's office. Hey, Gumshoe! Gumshoe! Hey, pal. Detective Gumshoe, were you in a meeting? I was, just taking a breather. My feet hurt. Sitting so long in the meeting? Actually, I had to serve everyone coffee. Sounds like Detective Gumshoe's still out of the loop. Say, have either of you seen Mr. Edgeworth? Edgeworth? No? Why do you ask? He's under fire from both the police department and the prosecutor's office. It's almost like the battle's between you two in court. And that sounds serious. It's because of what my sister said? Well, that's basically what it all boils down to. That falsified evidence 2 years ago. Now Mr. Edgeworth has the whole world after his blood. Yikes. Gumshoe, can you break into that office for me? But why would Edgeworth be blamed? It's not like he knew the evidence was forged. Lana Skye is the guilty party here, isn't she? And regardless, the prosecutor is responsible for the evidence he presents in court. Not only that, but as you know, there have been a lot of rumors going around about Mr. Edgeworth. Those who don't like him haven't been able to do anything because of his amazing talent as a prosecutor. But now with this, are there really so many people who hate him? In our world, there's only those with talent rise to the top. Mr. Edgeworth not only had that, but he's young. There's no better recipe I know of for making enemies. Hey Dick, keep up the good work. Yes sir. Let's go for lunch again sometime, my treat. Yes sir. You gotta take me back to the joint sometime, okay Dick? Yes sir. Seems you don't have any problem with enemies. Yeah, well, I'm careful not to stick out. Anyway, I'm a bit worried about him. Under all this pressure, I'm afraid Mr. Edgeworth just might crack. Actually, I took a look at the file earlier, while the coffee was brewing. He seems genuinely concerned for Edgeworth. Well, did you find out anything? The only evidence Doc left behind was during his final attack. His final attack? You mean when he killed Prosecutor Marshall, who was trying to protect some girl? Me. Seems Detective Gumshoe never realized Emma was the girl. That's when he left the most incriminating evidence of all. Well, what is it? Oh, let's see. You got something to do with the murder weapon. Oh, I forget. Look, it's all written somewhere in here, okay? His powers of recollection never fail to impress. Maybe we should show him the murder weapon. It might jog his memory. Joe Doc was 42 at the time of the crime. He was just your run-of-the-mill businessman. Businessman? What made him take to serial killing? And one day on his way home from work, he hit someone with his car. With his car? So, it was an accident. An accident, yes, but it transformed him into an animal. Animal? He killed a man that witnessed the accident. Then he killed a lady who saw the second crime. A kid walked by just then, so he killed him too. Then when he was burying the bodies, a jogger came up upon the scene and he was killed as well. And finally he turned himself in. It seems he was a pretty careless animal. Of course, this is all conjecture. There wasn't a single shred of evidence. So he turned himself in. Yes, but in the middle of his questioning, he fled and murdered his final victim. Prosecutor Marshall. That honestly just sounds like something out of a comedy show or a comedy movie. Oops, I've killed one guy. Oh no, I had to kill the second to protect myself. Oh no, I've killed a third. Oh no! It's like, I've ended up butchering your town. No, now no one can accuse me of committing a crime. And that crime was witnessed by someone too, but fortunately he was arrested on the spot. It's a good thing that last witness wasn't killed. The last witness? He must have meant Emma. Okay, show him the knife. About this. Hey, don't tell me that's... It has a tag attached to it with the label Sl9 Incident on it. I believe this would be the broken murder weapon you were speaking of. What are you throwing with that? Ever since that case was closed, that knife's been locked away in the locker. On the day Detective Goodman was murdered, this suddenly disappeared from the locker, and was found in Mr. Edgeworth's car muffler. Oh, that's it! Now I remember what that incriminating piece of evidence was. When you showed me that knife, it all came back to me. Well, what is it, Detective? Quick, before you forget again! This knife, it was Joe Dark's, wasn't it? Now, that's right. We traced it back to the store he bought it at, and it had his fingerprints on it too. But no one actually witnessed him using it to murder anyone, right? Now that's where his luck ran out. When you take a good look at the knife, you'll see it's broken. You don't have to take a good look not to notice that. Take a guess where the broken off tip of the knife was found. That's what did him in. Where was it? The victim, Neil Marshall, was carrying it, inside his own body. So it broke off of Neil? It was found deep inside the stab wound. Did it match Dark's knife? You bet. Down to the last fiber. It's a knife. What fibers? That's pretty conclusive. Well, there you have it in a nutshell. That's all I know. Can I ask you one more thing? Now, what is it? If it's money you need, you should ask Chief Gant. It's not money, but it does concern the Chief. This office is a crime scene, right? It's where Prosecutor Neil Marshall was murdered. The Chief's out now, and his office is locked. But we'd like to have a look around if that's okay. Well, any detective's ID card can unlock the door. What? Really? But if I let a civilian in there, I'd be charged with breach of trust. Breach of trust? Simply put, I'd be canned. Oh. Sorry, pal. I don't plan on getting fired just because of you. How about this ID card? It was Detective Goodman's. Emma, don't show him! Oh, that won't work either. The data was deleted the day he died. Oh. So in other words, Gumshoe was our only chance of getting into that office. I wonder if there's something we could show him that would make him change his mind. The Gantt team picture? Well, let me share a little advice with you as detective. Oh, that guy again. I'll keep that in mind. Yeesh. Died from blood loss in under 10 minutes. Weapon found in wound was missing tip. I've been studying up on those files. There's nothing wrong with Mr. Edgeworth's presentation. To think people are accusing him of injustice. I for one ain't buying it, pal. You looking into the case for Mr. Edgeworth? Yeah, it was a pretty big deal while it was going on, you know. After all, a serial killer was on the loose. But Lana was pretty clear in her confession. She forged evidence in order to prove Joe Dark guilty. I don't think I've shown him pretty much everything, and, like, nothing else I have here that I've gotten since I talked to him last would convince him to get me into the chief's office, as far as I know. So, okay, I've talked to Lana. Maybe Edgeworth is back. Wonder if Edgeworth is back yet. There he is! It looks like he's writing something. What are you doing here? Sure was quick to throw that paper on the floor. Tough day in court, huh? I've had to live the past 2 years with rumors flying around. What's another allegation to me? Cheer up, Mr. Edgeworth. I'm rooting for you. That's Edgeworth for you. Always trying to hide his real feelings. So, what do you want? Unlike some people, I don't have all day. God, he is so hawk-like when he looks dead on. There's no excuse for what I've done. 2 years ago, I used false evidence to obtain a guilty verdict. That's what it all breaks down to. And nothing I can do can erase that fact. But you didn't know, did you? I mean, that the evidence was falsified. The police department and the prosecutor's office share a bond of trust. If that bond is broken, we stand to lose everything. The police department's error is my error. My responsibility as the prosecutor in charge. And that fact remains the same, no matter what excuses I might have. Mr. Edgeworth, I take pride in my work. So tell me why. Why has it all come to this? Even Edgeworth can't keep this kind of emotion bottled up. Are you up for the trial tomorrow? First, last year's trial, and now this one. Seems all you can do is worry about me. To be honest, you're getting on my nerves. But Mr. Edgeworth, you can't just walk out on the trial. Tomorrow is the last day. It's too late to change prosecutors. I'll bet that's what my superiors are banking on. I never thought that case would come back to haunt me like this. What do you mean? That list of evidence seems too short. Most lists run twice as long. It's only half as long as most lists. That is odd. After Neil Marshall was murdered, I became prosecutor for that case. I may not have been part of the investigation, but at the time there was only one thing on my mind. I'd used the evidence I was given to prove the suspect guilty. Say, we just saw a picture taken around that time. The picture? Something seems strange about it. Could you tell us again about what happened that day? The day Detective Goodman was murdered. You weren't participating in the ceremony of the station, right? Edgeworth wasn't in the picture. I never cared for ceremonies, but I had to attend that one. Because you were awarded this? those receiving awards can't exactly skip out on the ceremony. I finished up at the office in the morning, then drove over to the police department. You finished up at the office? Yes, just odds and ends, clerical stuff. I didn't plan on returning to the office that day. That is, until I was asked to take something back. Take something back? This.
Oh yeah, Chief Gant asked you to hold on to that, didn't he?
Yes, it was a piece of evidence in a case that was closed half a year ago.
Yeah, I know, that was my case.
He asked me to bring it back to the prosecutor's office. It's the story we heard yesterday. So you came back here to the prosecutor's office because the chief asked you to? That's right. Surprised Phoenix doesn't remember the frickin' screwdriver. I mean, if it's a different screwdriver, who knows? Maybe I was mistaken, but it looks the same to me. This picture was hanging on the wall in Chief Gant's office. Prosecutor Neil Marshall. He had just started making a name for himself. Looks like this was taken when he received the King of Prosecutors trophy. Speaking of that, there's something that bothers me. Yes? The trophy Mr. Marshall is holding. It's a little different than yours. Oh, it's got a sword in it. Yes, you're right. It's got a broken sword in it. I remember now. Remember what? That was the official prosecutor trophy used until that time. There's a story behind it. Story? Sounds interesting. Would you mind telling it to us? It's simple, really. Contradiction. That's what the award's based on. Contradiction, huh? This award originates from an ancient Chinese tale. In Chinese, the word contradiction is written with 2 characters. The first means halberd, the second means shield. Have you heard this story? Me? Sure, everyone knows that. Why don't you tell it, though, for Emma's sake? Very well. It's not a halberd, that's a spear. Long ago in the kingdom of Chu, there was an arms merchant. One day, he presented the king with 2 items. The first was a halberd he claimed could slice through any shield or armor. The second was a shield he claimed could withstand any weapon. Wait a minute. Those claims contradict each other! Very perceptive, but then again you've heard this story before, right? Anyway, as you mentioned, the very description of these items discredit them both. When the king pointed this out, the merchant was left speechless, and thus the Chinese word for contradiction was born. Oh, I see! So the chipped shield and broken knife symbolize... Precisely so. They symbolize the merchant's items. The ancient tale ends with the merchant at a loss for words, but it's in our nature to pursue matters to their conclusion, even if it results in something as ugly as this.
Wow. Thanks, Mr. Edgeworth. I learned something new today.
It's funny. If that's so, then why were you only given a shield? You'll have to ask Chief Gant. 2 years ago, he had the halberd part of the award abolished. Chief Gant. I mean, all that was nice, but it doesn't really explain... Oh, is Star back? Excuse me. Would either of you care for a quarter pound of roast beef? Fuck yeah. Miss Star. I guess she's out of lunches. You certainly are the curious sort, aren't you? Kind of like the first person who sucked a cow's nipple to discover milk. I don't think that's how it worked, Angel. Still, I never thought you'd go digging up that case from 2 years ago. Everyone in this trial was involved in the Sl9 Incident. Not only that, but the murder occurred on the very day the evidence from that case was due for transferal. This can't all be attributed to mere coincidence. Aren't you forgetting something? You know, that little scene I happened to witness? The instant Lana stabbed Detective Goodman with a knife. No matter how much of the past you dig up, it won't change what I saw. Roast beef is meant to be savored when eaten. Star's hatred toward Lana. It all dates back to 2 years ago. Joe Dark. That's a name I'll not soon forget. We trailed him for half a year. Oh, the pressure. Still, I don't think I was ever more alive than I was then. Those days we were steamier than a bowl of hot gravy. Poor old Jake Marshall, though, must have been going through hell. You mean because of his brother's death? They were close, those two. After Neil died, something took over Jake. He became obsessed. Seeing Jake like that made her all the more desperate. Her? Lana Skye. My sister. The best of the best were put on that Sl9 case. Of course, they were led by that legendary duo. Lana and Chief Gant. That legendary pair was the reason we were able to keep up our investigation. That's why we're so shocked over how it turned out. You mean, with the forging of the evidence? Don't get me wrong, Joe Dark got what he deserved. Still, it was obvious the evidence produced in court was being manipulated. Items our team never found would suddenly appear, while other items were kept secret. But you didn't have proof anything illegal was done. I'm proof enough of what happened. After that case, all of us save Goodman were relieved of our duties, most without even so much as an explanation. Then Lana Skye transferred to the prosecutor's office and became chief prosecutor. Lana always wanted to be a prosecutor. Nothing's quite as simple as it appears. Huh? Lana Skye was merely being used as a pawn. That's my take on the matter. She was being used. Damon Gant and Lana Skye. 2 years ago, Gant was chief detective and Lana second in command. They were the best. They solved all kind of cases together, didn't they? Damon Gant's magnetism in particular was almost unreal. His magnetism? By that I mean his ability to attract evidence. He produced the most incredible evidence in the cases he handled. Incredible evidence? You mean... Oh yes, there were rumors about him even back then. No one dared confront him though. I guess she's talking about forged evidence. Back then, everyone looked up to Lana. All the detectives wanted to be like her. Really? Oh yes, myself included. I was a fool, really. She hated anything crooked and always watched out for the other detectives. That's why she was so concerned for Jake. Mr. Marshall. When Jake's brother was murdered, she felt as if she had lost her own brother. If it wasn't for her, I don't think Jake would have ever recovered from his shock. That's what makes it all more infuriating. Miss Starr. That's why I'll never be able to forgive her. Why did she have to turn so cold after that? Lana transferred to the prosecutor's office 2 years ago, didn't she? Yes, thanks to Chief Gant's powerful influence. Chief. That's right. Having solved the Sl9 case, his position as chief was secured. There was only one thing left for him to control, and then no one could stand in his way. The prosecutor's office. What? You mean, that's why Lana was transferred? If he can control the chief prosecutor, he can control the prosecutor's office. That must have been his goal all along. But how can he control Lana? Well, something about the evidence, sort of blackmail. I don't know, but one thing's for sure. Ever since that case ended, she's never been the same. It's only logical to conclude there must have been a reason for her change. At last, I'm finally getting close to the bottom of this ugly mess. Thank you, Miss Starr. You listen to me, rookie. It takes more than just ingredients to create fine cuisine. I hope you turn out to be a better chef than I've been. Alright, wait, there was... Edgeworth, get out of my way. Yeah, I knew I saw something. Wonder what he was writing for. Come on, Mr. Wright. Let's take a look. You crazy? Edgeworth is sitting right there. Just distract him. I'll check it out. Hey, Edgeworth. Is that Detective Gumshoe out the window there? Oh no, he's falling to the ground! Hold on. First, let me see what this girl's doing crawling around my feet. Didn't even look. What? Let her... If you can't read, I'll read it for you. It says, Letter of Resignation. Letter of Resignation? Edgeworth, you don't mean... I'm tired, Mr. Wright. I feel as if something inside me has died.
But Mr. Edgeworth, none of it is your fault.
I know the path I've walked. You don't need to tell me. And the path I've walked hasn't been a just one. I can't forgive myself for what I've done. And no one else should forgive me either. Uh-oh. I think he's serious.
Mr. Wright, please, you have to do something.
This letter of resignation. Wonder if I can use it for anything. Hey, Gumshoe! Gumshoe! Just run screaming all the way to the police department. I'm just waving this note in the air. Gumshoe! Let me in! Oh, you're back. You're still here? I gotta make 150 copies of these files. Brewing coffee, copying files. I'm turning into a regular DJ. You're a DJ as well? If I'm not mistaken, I think he means desk jockey. Oh, that DJ. I gotta admire your persistence, but my answer's still no. I'm not letting you into the chief's office, period. It'd be my neck on the line. That office is the last crime scene in the Sl9 Incident. I have to take a look in there. There's gotta be something we can do to make the detective change his mind. What's this crumpled up piece of paper?
No way! Mr. Edgeworth can't be serious!
Is he ever not serious?
I can't believe they pushed him out this far.
Mr. Edgeworth really feels responsible. At first I thought he was as cold as ice. But now I know different. He trusted us detectives to provide him with sound evidence. But we betrayed him. Detective. That's it. I made up my mind. But here, take my ID card. We can't do it. We can't do that. If someone found out, they wouldn't let you off the hook with another lost item report. Now look at me. It's no secret I'm already out of the loop. After all, I'm friends with Mr. Edgeworth. And depending on how this case turns out, I may already be as good as terminated. What? So at least let me do this. For Mr. Edgeworth's sake. Alright, detective. Thank you. Tuck swiftly into your pocket. Actually, I'm just curious. What's his ID number? Detective Gumshoe isn't very photogenic, is he? Whatever you do, just don't say that to his face. Look, his eyes are half shut. Yeah, and his mouth is half open. Hey, each of his shirt buttons is off by a notch. And he's got the narrow end of his tie in front. I think this goes beyond being photogenic issue. Oh, you're not gonna... Yeah, as it's too blurry, I can't see what the number is. Okay, well, I got the ID card. Here goes, Mr. Wright. That armor. Open sesame. If anyone finds us now, Detective Gumshoe's a goner. And if that happens, I'm counting on you to bail me out. Eek! Ah! Oh. Sorry. I thought you were a ghost. I didn't even know you could slap a ghost. Ah! Detective Gumshoe! What are you doing sneaking up on us like that? I wasn't sneaking. I was just worried something might go wrong. And so I came too. You're here, then what's the point of giving us your ID card? Oh, you crumpled it up. That's rude. Hey, don't do that in my card! I hardly ever get a chance to come in here, so I figured I'd have a look around myself. Besides, we're all in this together now. You really do want to get fired, don't you? Not if we're lucky. Now, come on, let's see what we can find out. Got a bad feeling about this. Okay, yeah. If I'm right, that picture was taken over here. This is a safe, isn't it? Safe? Now that word is ripe with intrigue. Okay, if you say so. It looks like a code needs to be entered in this panel to open it. 7-digit number. I think I just might know what it is. Do you know what it is? I have a hunch. Oh, I know. You want to try my birthday. It's... no, Gumshoe. I'm pretty sure I know what the number is. Better idea. It was nothing. And for Chief of Police, he's really not that secure. Yeah. Bingo. What number did you enter? Whose birthday was it, pal? 777777. The final ID card number on that record. What? The number of the mysterious executive officer who entered the room that day. You mean... 7... Stop making me say that number. That ID number? I think you're 1 7 shy this time. This can only mean one thing. That's Chief Gant's ID number. Say, anyone care to look inside? Oh, I should probably should. Is there any money in there? How much does he have stashed away? Look, it's a shard from a broken cup. It somehow looks familiar. Because you're carrying around a vase in your back pocket, Phoenix. Broken vase at that. There's something else in here too. What's this? It looks like a piece of leather cloth? This is a handprint, isn't it? Hey, I saw someone wearing a shirt like that once. You think the chief made up the design? I don't think so. Oh. Well, it was just a thought. Is that it? Is all that was in the safe? Apparently so. It's empty now. Piece of cloth with a handprint on it. And a broken shard from a cup. They look like pieces of evidence. But unless you can prove that they had something to do with this case, I'm afraid I can't just let you take them. After all, it's my neck on the line here. Great. Now I have to prove their relevancy to get them. How are these two items related to the Sl9 incident? Oh, come on, there's gotta be something we can show the detective. Yeah. Present. Where's that vase? Or the jar. Detective Gumshoe, could you have another look at this jar? All of us put that back together. Oh, those were the days. It's kind of early to be nostalgic. Wasn't this jar a piece of evidence from that case? Oh, that's right. One of them shards has an Sl9 incident sticker on it. Doesn't this ring any bells? You know, that fragment we just found? You mean this one? That was in the safe? Yes, that one. That was in the safe. Nope. Oh, now that you mention it, it's ringing a lot of bells. Well, let's see if it fits. Here, let me see that shard. I'll take a crack at this. Alright, go ahead, pal. Show us what a rookie can do. Mr. Wright, here's some glue. If I can piece this together again, it'll prove Chief Gant was knowingly hiding evidence. Goes. Well, I mean, there's only one piece to put on, so... That was so hard. Oh my god. I guess you could have, like, not fully assembled it at this point, but I don't know. There. It fits like a charm. That, of course, means Chief Gant willingly and knowingly hid a piece of this jar in his safe. In other words, he concealed a piece of evidence from the Sl9 incident. But, hey guys, get a load of this. What is it? This piece you just attached is different from the others. There's a reddish line on it. Reddish line? That's blood. I don't get it. Why would Chief Gant hide this in his safe? What, did he use that to kill Goodman? That desk on the other side of the room, was that your sister's? Yes, that's where I was waiting for Lana. On that day 2 years ago? Is anyone using it now? No, sir. This is entirely Chief Gant's office now. He practices a strict policy of preserving the crime scene. It's a strange reason to leave it there. He leaves it as a warning to everyone else. He wants us to always be alert. He told us so himself at a New Year's party. Of course, he was pretty intoxicated at the time. I see. So, ever since Lana left, no one ever touches that desk? No one except Chief Gant. And the cleaning lady who's in here each morning. Still, 2 years have passed since that incident. There can't possibly be any clues remaining. Can I ask you something? Sure. You only came here to look around, right? Because it's one of those Sl9 crime scenes. I mean, that's your only reason for coming here, isn't it? Why do you ask? You don't think... Nah, you wouldn't be... No. No, there's no way. Never mind, don't worry about it. Okay. Now then, let's look around a bit more. Hey, hold on. Not so fast, buddy. Huh? What is it? When someone tells you don't worry about it, it's supposed to stop bothering you, pal. Don't just let it go at that. Sorry. This guy's starting to get on my nerves. Okay, so what's bothering you? And you two don't think Chief Gant might be a suspect, do you? What? Yeah, Mr. Wright. What do we think of him? I've thought he was a suspect for a while now. Chief Gant. So it's finally come to this. I think of him. Perhaps it's best I don't divulge my feelings yet. There he goes, ignoring me again. Oh. I'm sorry, Gumshoe. This was taken on that day 2 years ago. The day Joe Dark ran out of the questioning room and tried to kill Emma. Okay, yeah, how did he get out? Why was Marshall the only one to catch him? After receiving his award trophy, Mr. Marshall took a picture here, then went along with Chief Gant to question Doc. Bet he never knew he'd be dead just a few hours later. Gee, you think? The shelves are mostly empty. Lana must have cleaned them out when she transferred over to the prosecutor's office. There's a small picture frame on the left shelf. Hey! This is when Lana and I went to the theme park. Oh dear. This was Lana's desk. It sure is tidy. Lana's always been a meticulous cleaner. Not even any dust on it. It's like someone's still keeping it clean. Does Lana ever come back here? No. Chief Gant must still keep it clean in memory of their partnership. And they were the stuff legends were made of. Does he keep it in memory of her? In memory of the crime? The Chief's organ sure is a sight to behold. Occasionally we hear him playing it from the Criminal Affairs Department. It's on the 2nd floor, and this is the 15th. When the detective screws up, the Chief calls him to his office, and makes him listen to the organ for hours. What's so bad about that? Music soothes the soul. After that, the detective can't hear anything for days except for the ringing in his ears. So it's an instrument of punishment, literally. So Chief Gant tortures his subordinates? I feel like that's a crime in and of itself. But aren't the Chief's ears affected? He never listens to anyone anyway. Well, that's beside the point. What's that armor? This is the real deal, isn't it? This armor and these weapons? Yeah, sure is, pal. The Chief doesn't care for imitations. First the pipe organ, now this armor. Do you know how many taxpayer dollars must have gone into this room? What? You mean we're paying for this? Yeah.
100% you are. That's it. I'm not paying 1% of my taxes. No. Emma, don't pay the police part. Fuck the police. I don't have any taxes to pay. Shh, be careful what you say. Who knows? The chief may be hiding in the sawmill as we speak.
I don't think he'd fit in there. Even if he did, he'd never be able to get back out.
But cut it out. You guys don't know how scary that guy can be. Wow. Look at the size of Chief Gant's desk.
Speaking of that, when we were here earlier... Oh, it's you two. But that paper he was reading in his desk. That was an evidence list. We saw it when Edgeworth was talking to us. I know what he's reading. This looks like a list of evidence used in a case. A list of evidence? In most cases, the list runs twice as long as this.
Hey, look at the case name.
Huh? Sl9 Incident. Wonder what this is doing here. Hold on, detective. What'd you just say? I said, I wonder what... No, about evidence lists. Normally they're twice as long? Oh, that's right. I guess there wasn't a lot of evidence. Half-size list of evidence. That list of evidence, it seems too short. Most lists run twice as long. What would the other half of the list be doing here?
Knew it. The chief must be hiding something about that case.
It would appear so. Okay. Nope, no clues there. Okay, that's the safe.
Wow, look at the size of Chief Gant's desk.
Okay, we found this inside the drawer, a list of evidence from the Sl9 incident.
Mr. Edgeworth had the other half of that list.
What would this list be doing here? Better look a little more into this list. Okay. It's not telling me anything. Oh! Oh! Oh. It's a picture! What the shit? Is that, Emma's picture? I wonder what this is. It looks like someone drew some kind of sketch here. What is it? Did you find something? Can't make it out. I better keep quiet about it for now. Huh? Oh, it's nothing. Why are your eyes moving about like that, Mr. Wright? Better not forget about this picture. Now that just shows two figures standing over one another. Okay, so hypothesis at the moment. Dark... I don't know if the other murders that Dark supposedly committed were true, but I feel like Gant killed Dark to cover up something. Neil burst in on them. So Gant and Dark knew each other somehow. When Dark broke into this room, he was here to kill Gant. Why? I don't know. But Neil managed to get there in time to stop him from hurting Emma. I don't know if Dark killed Neil. I mean, he might have, but Dark ended up unconscious. Neil ended up with a dagger in his back, which, from the positioning, doesn't make any sense at all. So I think Gant came along and stabbed Neil in the back, but the why is still a question. Okay. Well, no, we can see the blood, so that doesn't matter. Actually, Hey, I just bought some of that stuff. Now I can go around detecting blood traces too.
Wow, is that a new type? I've never seen that bottle before. Add 3 inches to your base height.
Base height? Hey, let me see that. Looming tall. New and improved growth formula? You mean this can't detect any blood traces? Well, it's not quite the same thing as luminol. So that's why the lady kind of had that smirk on her face. Gumshoe, did you buy, like, dick growth formula? Can I get something with this? Detective Gumshoe, I'd like you to have a look at this. Hey, I know what that is. So you want to take some fingerprints? That's a great idea, Detective. Alright, go to town, sheesh. Man, what are you doing? Why are you sticking out your hand like that? And go ahead, take my fingerprints. It's not your fingerprints we want to take. Huh? Come on, this isn't the time to crack jokes. We're talking about the cloth we found in the safe. Oh, right. Oh, I know that. The one with the handprint on it, right? Sheesh. Now, where's your sense of humor? Okay, Mr. Wright, let's check for prints. Sprinkle the powder, yada yada. And once they've been absorbed in the prints, blow the rest away. What are you, my mom? I'd be told 1,000,000 times. Alright, let's get this over with. Oh, right, I have to select a finger. Yeah, index finger first. Just sprinkle that dust everywhere. Just get it all nice. Then blow it away. Give it my best shot. That kind of result won't be getting any good for matching prints, will it? But it doesn't look like you will get a clear result from this print. Okay, let's try a different finger. Middle finger looks like the most defined one, darkest. So, sprinkle. Yeah, I gotta get more on there. I think we got what we need. Okay, so who do we got? We got Gant. It's not Gant. Wow, he's 65? Jesus. Eakins, no. Jake, no. Bruce, Dick, Lana, Emma. Emma, why is your fingerprint on this? No. How can this be? What are Emma's fingerprints doing here? Hey, you found a match? Whose fingerprints were they? Huh? Oh, it seems the prints are too old. They aren't clear enough to get a match. Oh, that's too bad. I thought they'd be Dark's prints. Psst. Hey, you, over here. What's going on here? What are that kid's prints doing inside the chief's safe? Don't ask me. Let's just keep this information from Emma for now. Why? Tell her! Here, maybe you should hold on to this. Strip of cloth folded and handed to the court record. Well, was I any help? Of course. Thanks to your ID card, we were able to get some hard evidence. Well, that's not very kind, is it? In other words, if it wasn't for his ID card, he would have been useless. Isn't that right, you in the coat? Chief Gant! We didn't think you'd be back so soon. Fortunately, I'm a man who believes in signs. As I was walking to my meeting, I happened to look out a window and saw a stray dog run right into a pole. Just then I thought of a certain detective. You mean me, sir? Now then, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you all to leave. Yes, sir. Sorry. Oh, you in the coat? Me, sir? Drop off your ID on the way out. You won't be needing it anymore. But, sir... Now get out. Yes, sir. We'll be on our way too, then. Oh wait, you, the one without the spiky hair. Don't go yet.
Me, sir? I'd like a word with you. But, sir, I'm not a licensed scientific investigator yet. You with the spiky hair. You're free to go. Mr. Wright? Oh, look, pal. If I told you once, I told you 1,000 times. The chief's office is off limits. But no, you just had to go sneaking in there like that, didn't you? Thought you said you didn't care anymore if you were fired. Yeah, but if I knew it'd be like this, I never would have said it. Now that I've seen the evidence Chief Gant was hiding in his office, I think I'm finally starting to get the picture. It's hard to believe anyone could keep quiet about it all this time. Anyway, you listen to me? I'm gonna try and smooth things over with the Chief again. Later, pal. Dude, I think you were just fired. After that, I heard from Emma. She said the police want to ask her some questions, so she'll be busy for the rest of the day. So I can show the cloth to Lana. I see, so the Chief asked Emma to come in for questioning. It's no use thinking about it. Tomorrow's the final day in court. I'm committed to doing everything I can to defend you, which is why I'm here. But I've already told you all I can. What you've told me over these past couple days is absolutely nothing. Not a single useful thing. Really? I believe I did mention something quite important. Something I told you right at the beginning. I said that I was the one who stabbed Detective Goodman. You know, I think I finally figured it out. Who it is you're hiding behind those words. Mia did a good job mentoring you. I'm rather jealous. Seems Edgeworth was right. Edgeworth? Once you're convinced you know something, no one can persuade you otherwise. Thick-headed is the term he used, I believe. It's my chance to get her to tell me the rest of the story. I have to admit, I was more than a little perplexed at first. You insisted that you did it, yet there was no incriminating evidence. That's when it hit me. It's not that you're unwilling to tell the truth. It's that you're incapable of doing so, because of a certain individual. What an intriguing notion. A certain individual, you say. So you think I'm protecting this person? Protecting? No, I think afraid of is more like it. If I'm not mistaken, the person in question may have persuaded you to silence. For argument's sake, Mr. Wright, whom may I ask is this person you're speaking of? The one I am supposedly so frightened of? What is this person's name?
Take that!
Well, Miss Skye? Mr. Wright, you are addressing the Chief Prosecutor. Do not forget your place. Take it she's still not ready to spill the beans. My apologies. Could you please tell me a bit more about the circumstances? We were partners until 2 years ago. I respected him as a detective. Assuming he is respectable, then tell me something. Why would he try to hide his crimes? His crimes? Both of you and Edgeworth will be brought before a board of inquiry for what you did. Specifically, hiding and forging evidence. Of course, these are serious offenses. Why is it, though, that Chief Gant's name was never mentioned? Chief Gant? Edgeworth didn't know the truth behind the forgery. The only party who could have possibly investigated that evidence was me. I had access because I was second in command of that investigation. Yes, you, but also one other, Damon Gant. If you intend to accuse Chief Gant, you'll need more than just words. Show me proof that Chief Gant falsified evidence in that case. I just found this in a safe in the Chief's office. This jar piece and this strip of cloth. Do you know what these are? They're pieces of evidence from the Sl9 Incident. The person concealing evidence was none other than Chief Gant himself. Now tell me, why are you taking all the blame for him? Touché, Mr. Wright. It's as you surmised. I cannot disobey the Chief's orders. Even if it means being found guilty for murder. Why not? Come now, Mr. Wright. You can't possibly expect me to be able to tell you that. 3 days ago, I had no choice but to cooperate in the murder of Detective Goodman. Or perhaps I should say follow orders.
Yes, that's more accurate than cooperate. Although I can't tell you the details, I can say that I was given an order that day. I need you to dispose of Bruce Goodman's body. You'll find it inside the trunk of Miles Edgeworth's car. Just as I suspected. Despite what everyone believes, you were not the one who murdered Detective Goodman. Correct. But I was trying to take the body out of Edgeworth's car. The trunk was broken. I discovered that murder weapon while inspecting the body. The murder weapon? You mean Edgeworth's knife? No. When I found the body, this was the knife stuck in it. The knife from the Sl9 Incident. Serial killer Joe Dark's knife. I couldn't just leave that knife in him, so I took it out and stabbed him with another knife. That would be Edgeworth's knife. That's right. Even though he was already dead, my hands were shaking at the thought of stabbing him. And that's why I ended up cutting my hand. And that is the reason for the bandage on your right hand. Yes, it seems that I got blood on the victim's shoe as well. And then she saw me just as I plunged the knife in. Star. Why did you need to hide Dark's knife so badly? It took a lot of work to finally close the Dark case 2 years ago. It was over with. I didn't ever want it to be opened again. My intent was to prevent that by whatever means possible. So, you hid Dark's knife? The weapon used to stab the detective was evidence in the Joe Dark case. If word got out, which it would, the reporters would have a field day with that. So, you wrapped the knife in your scarf and hid it. In Edgeworth's exhaust pipe. Right. Then I called my sister. To tell her what happened, and to ask her to hide the knife that was inside my muffler. You asked Emma? I didn't want anyone on the force to know about this. That would explain why Emma is so confident. About Lana's innocence. Speaking of phone calls, I had a bad feeling about one of them that day. A bad feeling? The truth is, after I received those orders from Chief Gant, the first thing I did was make a phone call. A phone call to Patrolman Jake Marshall. To Marshall? Why on earth would you call him? The lead investigator for the Sl9 incident had been murdered. I wanted that fact to be kept hidden, and I needed help. He was the only other person I could trust. Or at least, I thought I could trust him at the time. However, it seems that after I spoke to him, he went off on an escapade of his own. Oh, you mean, not wanting the case to die, he decided to take things into his own hands. He disguised himself as Officer Goodman and tried to steal the evidence. He had already stolen the ID card, but it seems he still hadn't made up his mind to break into the evidence room. After my phone call, any remaining doubts he had must have disappeared. So, your phone call caused the incident in the evidence room. I'm afraid that's all I can tell you. But Lana, you've earned my respect, Mr. Wright, both as a defense attorney and an investigator. Now please, don't pursue this any further in court tomorrow. Tomorrow's trial. There's only one way to drive off Lana's demons. I've got to get to the bottom of everything. Detective Goodman's real murderer. And what went down in the chief's office 2 years ago. Alright. Well, it is bedtime for me. This fucking case is taking forever, holy shit. So, yeah. Tomorrow should be the last day of the trial. Tomorrow being actually tomorrow. So, yeah. Thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll finish up this tomorrow, question mark. I really want it to be done. I kind of want to move on already. This one is dragging, not gonna lie. Bye-bye.